Hello and welcome into the first episode of the PHFL NFL Podcast. For those who don't know, PHFL stands for the Pizza Hut Fantasy League, a fantasy football league created by a group of guys who are working together at our local Pizza Hut restaurant. All three of us here today play in the PHFL, play fantasy football, and we decided to start a podcast talking about the NFL, seeing as that's what we do most of the time anyway. So with that brief background out of the way, I think it's about time that we all introduce ourselves. Firstly, the man behind the voice that you've been hearing so far is myself, Adam. Next, we have the only host of the podcast who's actually still working for the aforementioned pizza establishment, my good friend Kai. Hello, Kai.
How are we? Good to be here.
Bad. Yes, it's
good to still be part of that wonderful brand.
Yes, exactly. Our pizza establishment. Probably shouldn't mention it too much more. We might get sued. You never know.
Copyright.
Exactly. And finally, as described by himself, but also by me, we have an interloper, a man who's never actually worked for our pizza establishment, Mikey. Hello, Mikey.
How you doing? Never worked for Pizza Hut, but have long been an admirer of pizza in general.
Oh yeah, I think we all are, aren't we? Exactly. An interesting story just to start the podcast is that this is Mikey and I's first time actually speaking to each other in person, ever. Obviously, we've spoken via WhatsApp and stuff like that in our group chats for the Fantasy League, but never by voice. And we've obviously never met in person either. But maybe we will after the current global pandemic. You never know.
Side note, we are all sitting in separate households.
Yes, exactly.
Digitally.
Exactly. We're not in the one room together. We're all doing this online. So hopefully the recording works perfectly fine, and there should be no problems. Hopefully no internet drops out throughout this. If it does, there might be a hard cut before we come back for another game. A rough outline of how this podcast will function for the moment. It probably will change in the future, but just what we thought would happen to begin with is that we'll aim to have a podcast up by every Thursday before the Thursday night football happens. We're looking during that podcast to review the previous week's games that have happened, and then we'll do a wee preview for the coming week, covering all the major talking points there has been in the week past and any that are coming up. At the end, we've got a wee predictions sort of league set up. We'll be keeping a running score and also seeing who wins week to week for that. And I'm sure there'll be more stuff added in as we go. And there's certain dynamics found and see what happens. But basically, I think that's what we've got. If there's anything else any of you two think we need to add, feel free to add it.
Just, more background on the three of us. I am the odd one out of the three. I am a resident Eagles fan, unfortunately. I'm joined by Adam and Mikey, who are both Packers fans. They tend to... I like to call them glory hunters. I like an underdog.
I mean, yeah, I would suggest, I don't know about you, Mikey, but I would suggest that we just have good taste.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that we are glory hunters, considering that the Eagles have won the most recent Super Bowl out of the two
franchises. That's also a very good point. Yeah, that's a good point, yeah. But yes, with those brief introductions out the way, I hope they were fairly brief anyway. I think we just move on to the games that happened last week, starting with Thursday night football. So I'm hoping that everyone knows, but for anyone who doesn't know, it was Miami travelling to Jacksonville. A clash of the beard versus the moustache. I think there was some beef online between the two, or maybe not online, but certainly some beef beforehand between Fitzpatrick and Minshew. And it ended up in a 31-13 win for Miami.
Rather surprisingly.
Yep, I was very surprised with the result. I thought that the Jags would have came into this game, especially being at home, and rolled over the top of the Dolphins. But credit to the Dolphins. I stayed up to watch the game, and I thought they were terrific. Fitzpatrick looked like the younger out of the two quarterbacks, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just amazed with how he's able to rush as much as he does, and a lot of them don't even appear to be scrambles. They're actually planned rushes as well, which for a man of his age is very impressive. Talking about that Miami rushing game, there were 3 attempts each for Breida and Howard and 22 for Myles Gaskin, and he was on 75% of the snaps. And I think at the start of the season, when Miami brought in Breida and Howard, no one expected Gaskin to be that workhorse running back, but there he is.
I don't think anyone even considered they would have a role to play by week 3, but he appears to be taking the lead by quite a distance. no touchdown on Thursday night. The only rushing touchdowns came from Fitzpatrick, as you say, with his fantastic legs. Take from that what you wish. And Howard, who managed to rush 3 times for 1 yard and a touchdown. Effective work.
It takes some effort to be that bad, I would say, in terms of efficiency.
I think the interesting thing with Jordan Howard as well is, on his previous teams, I think he was just looking for that spotlight to be the number one running back on a team, and I really thought that this would have been the year for him. I thought he was going to have a breakout year, but here we are 3 weeks into the season, and he's rushed for, maybe 11 yards or something in total.
Exact figure.
He's a touchdown in every game, so I guess they'll be using him as a goal line running back and let Gaskin handle the rest of the workload.
Howard has had 16 rushing attempts this season for 12 yards and 3 touchdowns.
I mean, if he's getting a bonus for touchdowns, then I don't think he's going to be complaining.
I think it'll be half it, yeah.
But at 0.75 of a yard per attempt, it's not the most efficient I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's not what you look for in a running back.
No, definitely not. The passing game in Miami, Parker had 5 targets, as did Gaskin. So Gaskin appears to be mainly involved in the whole offense, rushing and catching. Yep. And there was also a touchdown. Talking about fantasy for a little bit, I had Mike Gesicki as my tight end for this week, and he managed to get a touchdown, but he only had 1 catch. There's been a lot of talk, certainly in the fantasy community, over the last the end of last season when Gesicki started to break out, and the start of this year, that possibly Gesicki was going to be the next kind of breakout tight end, taking on a role similar to like Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce. Maybe not quite as high as that, but certainly one that's really good at catching. But it appears he's not really getting a lot of the game. He only had 1 catch when people were talking about a breakout.
He only had 1 catch. Your lead receiver in Devontae Parker only had 5, but Ryan Fitzpatrick only tried to throw 20 times, so he only had 18 completions across the game in comparison to 30 of Gardner Minshew. So I think it looks like the Dolphins probably just focused on the run.
I think
Thursday night.
I think you need to be patient with Gesicki as well, because as much as I like Ryan Fitzpatrick, this is Tua's offense, and it will be, whether it's the start of next season or midway through this season. So you'd like to think that in training camp pre-season, there was some form of partnership with Tua and Gesicki and maybe the rest of the wide receivers, but I guess that needs to be put in the back burner just now until Fitzpatrick finally hands over the reins.
Yeah, that's a good point, because typically you see with young quarterbacks when they come in, they're looking for that kind of safety blanket almost of the tight end or the running back, which are the short throws to kind of just drop the ball off, as opposed to the long ones to the wide receiver. So as you say, Mikey, maybe when Tua comes in, I guess he's going to break out there. Do we have anything else to say about Miami before we move on to Jacksonville?
I think as much as I thought that the Jags were going to go 2-1 and the Dolphins were going to go 0-3, it's a tough schedule coming up for Miami. They've got Seattle and the 49ers up next, so who knows how that's going to play out, and maybe those back-to-back losses and maybe potentially going 1-4 could lead to Tua stepping in. Yeah,
when you ask the question, who knows what's going to happen there, I do. It's 2 losses, I think.
I think that's probably quite a bleak outlook for across the next few weeks.
Yeah, definitely. We never know. We might see Tua earlier than some people might have expected. I think a lot of people were hoping, he'd be able to sit for quite a while, but we'll see what happens there. Moving on to the Jacksonville side of the ball, the notes I've got down here is James Robinson had a monster day for fantasy. He only had 46 yards on the ground, but he did score 2 touchdowns, and then he had 6 catches for 83 yards. Basically, the whole of the offense going through him as well.
Yeah, it looks like it.
I've also got noted down just below that, and I have this for a few teams, just the Jags looked fairly bad. And is Minshew Mania gone?
Yeah, I don't know if you've watched Thursday Night Football, but a lot of the talk pre-game was who had the most pressure going into this game between Fitzpatrick and Gardner Minshew. And a lot of people were saying that Fitzpatrick was the one under the most pressure because he has Tua behind him waiting to go, but in my opinion, it was Gardner Minshew that was under the most pressure. He was a late round draft pick, came in and took the job from Nick Foles last season. But if they start to rack up the losses coming into the midway point of the season, will they potentially think about ending up with a top 10 draft pick and maybe getting someone like Justin Fields from Ohio State in?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of talk, certainly at the start of the season, that Jacksonville were going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, especially when they then lost Fournette and they didn't really have anyone properly in the backfield, that a big name that we knew. There was talk that they were basically tanking to get that first overall draft pick to get Trevor Lawrence, but maybe Minshew has something to say about that to try and keep
I don't know if it's a case of Minshew having something to say or the New York teams having something to say about that. But
yeah, that's very true. We'll be getting onto that later, exactly. Do you have anything to add for the Jags, Kai?
Like you say, obviously about pressure, like Ryan Fitzpatrick has got Tua sitting in the wings waiting. Minshew's not got that. Minshew kind of knows that it's on him. So like Mikey said, I think there's a slightly different type of pressure on him. Everyone's kind of relying on him to get the offense going this year, but he's not really got a lot to work with, to be fair to him. He's not got many to target. It looks like he's probably going to dump a lot onto Robinson for the coming weeks, but just need to wait and see, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, all in all, I was pleasantly surprised with Thursday Night Football, to be honest. I thought it was going to be one of those games that you look at, which often happens in Thursday Night Football, and you go, ugh, don't really know if I want to stay up and watch that. But I was pleasantly surprised when you had 44 points on it, and there was some play happening.
I think the same could be said about this week's Thursday Night
Football. Yes, again, we'll get onto that.
That'll come.
If everyone's happy with what we said about Thursday Night Football, that was probably more talk about Thursday night than we thought we'd be able to. Moving on to the first game on Sunday, which was one of the 1 o'clock fixtures, which was Houston travelling to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Houston, who were 0-2 before this game, having had two tough games against the Chiefs and the Ravens, lost 28-21 away at Pittsburgh. Again, my first note here is just that the Steelers' defense is good. Everyone thought it was going to be good, and it is again. They'd limited Watson to have only one rush. I don't know if that's maybe game plan or if they were just able to contain him in that pocket, but Watson with only one rush is almost kind of unheard of. He seems to have had a lot of rushes when he's been playing before.
They seem to stop quite a lot of the rush, the Steelers. I mean,
as a David
the leading
Johnson
rusher, he's only got 23 yards rushing, and amongst the whole team, they're less than 30 yards rushing.
Yes, it wasn't fun as a David Johnson fantasy owner. It was not fun to have him in.
It was not pleasant. No. Stark contrast to week 1 when it looked like it could be a great find for you.
I feel bad for the Texans though. They have had an extremely tough opening to the season. I remember, I don't know if it was 2016 or 17, they came from 0-3 and ended up making the playoffs, but it's looking very unlikely this season. And obviously, I think it mainly comes down to the fact that DeAndre Hopkins moved on, and they're just really struggling to find their identity on offense massively. They don't know if they want to be a pass-heavy offense or a rush-first offense, and I think Deshaun Watson's struggling massively without Hop.
Yep, definitely. That's a point I have for later on when we look at the Arizona game, for who won that trade. And I think so far it's looked fairly obvious who's won that trade between Arizona and the Texans.
You know, Deshaun Watson still has quite a few targets. He seems to spread it across the field between Cobb, Fuller when he's fit, Kenny Stills, Brandon Cooks, Geno Atkins and stuff as well. Like, not Geno Atkins, he's the Bengals defensive line. Don't know what he's doing up on the receiving core for the Texans.
No, not I.
But he seems to spread it across all of them, rather than targeting one specifically. But like you say, he doesn't have that elite receiver that he had in Hopkins that he could kind of dump a lot onto.
The tight end you're thinking of is Jordan Akins.
Jordan Akins, not Geno Atkins.
As much as the Texans were bad, as you said, the Steelers D was terrific again. But just another thing is that I've got noted down is I just feel like this is the similar Steelers offense to the one we've seen roughly in 2017 and 18 without Antonio Brown. But Steelers are notorious for bringing in and drafting amazing wide receivers, and we've seen it with Juju, Deontay Johnson, and Chase Claypool looks really good as well. But on top of that, Big Ben threw to Eric Ebron and Vance McDonald quite a lot as well. So I think this offense, including the run game with James Conner, who had back-to-back 100-yard rushing games, is looking amazing. I think they look to already be a lock-in for the playoffs.
Yeah, I think
I would tend to agree.
I think that a lot of people were worried about the Steelers. Obviously, last year was kind of a write-off without Big Ben, but they were worried with the way that the Ravens were kind of taking over that division. I think a lot of Steelers fans, especially, were worried that they might not be atop that for quite a long time. But definitely, as you were saying there, Mikey, their wide receivers are normally great. Obviously, Deontay Johnson got a suspected concussion. He's in the concussion protocol. Ebron had those 7 targets, as you were saying. But the one point I was going to bring up there was, though Connor did look good, I agree, a couple of 100-yard rushing games, the Steelers used 4 running backs in that game there, and it wasn't just like the odd carry. Like most of them had 4 or 5 carries with Farland and Snell, and I think Sanders just had 1. But normally the Steelers and Tomlin is a kind of bell cow running back. Like he just uses 1, especially when he had Bell. He just used 1 in Connor's first season mainly. Like it was just using him. But I was just wondering if you think that's something they're going to be to worry about if you're, say, a fantasy owner of James Conner. Are you worried that you might lose some of those touches, especially with his slight injury proneness?
I don't. In a way, yes, but the thing that we seen when Antonio Brown was the wide receiver 1 there with Juju is that the Antonio Brown was taking a lot of double coverage from the secondary, and it was leaving Juju open. And I think when you've got a team that has so many good wide receivers and a good running game, there's going to be holes that people can pick, and whether that's in the passing game or in the rushing game, I think James Conner will be fine as a fantasy aspect this season.
You got anything to add for Pittsburgh, okay?
Not massively, much like Mikey says, in terms of the run game and stuff. I think James Conner's still very much the lead guy there, as I'm sure everyone is aware, but I would probably watch out for McFarlane and Snell. Although they probably don't get many touches. McFarlane went for nearly 50 yards. So he could become relevant in the weeks to come, and it's good to have a bit of both. It's good to keep folk guessing. You're not going to go run heavy, you're not going through the air all the time. So yeah, I reckon Steelers are pretty much a certainty for the playoffs come this year, especially if the Ravens don't start bucking up their ideas a wee bit.
Well, yeah, especially with the expanded playoffs as well for this year as well, when you've got 7 from each conference going into the playoffs. I think no one's obviously a certainty, but I think certainly they're one of the ones you'd expect to get in there.
Yeah.
Just one final note on the Steelers as well. After Big Ben outrushed Saquon Barkley in week 1, he's went -2 yards and then -3 yards in weeks 2 and 3. But I think that's more down to taking a knee when they're winning than him actually being a poor rusher. But yeah, I think Big Ben is my dark horse for the rushing title this season.
We'll see what happens. I wonder how many bookies were taking a bet on Big Ben to outrush Saquon this year.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder what odds he'd have got. But moving on from that game, we'll move on to the next game we're going to talk about from the 1 o'clock time slot. Moving on to Kai's Philadelphia Eagles, who are
those pesky Eagles
at home to the Bengals. We have our first tie of the year. 23-23. Oh yeah, 23-23 after overtime. And what I've got noted down for overtime was weird. It appeared that no one seemed to actually want to win the game.
No,
because no one took that risk. They always were putting away, and in the last proper attempt, the Steelers had that 59-yard field goal attempt, and there was a false start penalty, and then they had to punt.
It almost looked.
Sorry,
as if
I said the Steelers there. I meant to say the Eagles.
The Steelers there. It just looked as if nobody was really confident in just going for it, even from quite far out with a field goal, like you say with the Eagles. They had a few opportunities before that as well to just spot the ball and take the points. But yeah, the big man that gave away the penalty for the first field goal will be kicking himself. Lost them a very good chance at coming away with the points there. Against a Bengals team that look rejuvenated with Burrow under centre.
I think the Eagles players will be very glad there was no fans in the stadium for that one, because it was just a horrible performance. I know Doug Peterson's an excellent coach, but he seems like he's kind of lost his way a little bit since that Super Bowl win. Just one thing I've got down here is that in the last 3 successive seasons, Carson Wentz thrown a total of 7 interceptions in each season, over a 16-game span, and he's already on 6 interceptions through
Yeah.
3 games this season.
Yeah.
That is just shocking. I don't know if that's down to, I feel like they've carried on their injury struggles from last year. They've got a lot of people missing, but that was one team that I actually thought was going to do well this season. And after 3 games, I'm really not liking what I'm seeing from the Eagles.
That Philly O-line is just decimated with injuries, really. There's no one there. And you just
it's a shame to see, because a quarterback like Carson Wentz, with his injury struggles as well, he really needs a good offensive line, and that's one thing that I think he depends on, and he's not getting it at the moment, and that's why he's struggling. But on the other hand, with Joe Burrow, I'm liking what I'm seeing so far with him. He's had the most pass attempts through the first 3 career games of any quarterback in NFL history, which is 141. So he's definitely not afraid to throw the ball. The only issue with them, again, is with the Bengals, is the offensive line. I'd love to see Joe Burrow on a team like Indianapolis Colts, who have an elite offensive line, and see how he did on that. But that's obviously something that they'll look to in the future as they try and protect him over the coming years.
definitely moving on to the Bengals there is that Mixon rushed for less than 50 yards, and he's yet to have a rushing touchdown this year as well. So though that O-line seems to be dodgy, as we were saying as well, like not only just for the pass but for the rush as well, they don't seem to be given any blocks for that rushing game.
Yeah, I was happy to see Joe Mixon struggle this week because Kai had him in fantasy, so and I was playing Kai, so. But besides that, they have been struggling a lot. Joe Burrow's been getting sacked a lot. So, but as I said, they're 0-2-1 just now. Still looking for that first win of the season. But again, as I said, I'm liking what I'm seeing so far, and I think they'll be okay in the years to come.
Quick question: Who do you think is more happy with that tie? I know that no one likes a tie, but of the two teams, who would have been happier with that tie? Do you think the Bengals, just to give them something, or Burrow was saying that they really need a win?
I think there's more to be built on from the tie for the Bengals than the Eagles. The Eagles had a bit of a Super Bowl hangover, and then this year they've been poor to start. And I think after 3 games, if you said that the Eagles are going to be 0-2-1, they would be upset about that. But if you said the Bengals were going to be 0-2-1 and that Joe Burrow was playing well, I think they'll definitely see potential in that.
It never looked as if the game was sliding either way. It was pretty even. It was kind of tit for tat, back and forward between who was ahead. So nobody ever really quite got out in front. But yeah, I would say the Bengals will probably come away from that happier than the Eagles.
I've got a couple of other things that I've got noted down here. That Tyler Boyd had 13 targets from Joe Burrow, there, which was huge. T. Higgins obviously had 2 touchdowns, and AJ Green was less involved this week. The previous weeks, Burrow had just seemed to be thrown to Green and hoping that he might bring it down. At one point, I think Green had something like 9 targets and only 2 catches on week 1 or 2. I can't remember what week it was.
Yeah, it looks like obviously through week 1 and 2, it looked like he was kind of trying to go to Green regardless of who was open. But throughout all that, Tyler Boyd seemed to be getting more of the completions, and I think you can see obviously from this week. 10 receptions and 13 targets for over 120 yards. I don't know if that's a sign of things to come, but it looks like they've got a good relationship between Burrow and Tyler Boyd. So potentially could, might be a bit of frustration with AJ Green there.
Well, see,
not being targeted as much.
I've got a question here that perhaps AJ Green, probably very likely AJ Green was less targeted in this game, or certainly less receptions, because of Darius Slay. I think Darius Slay, the cornerback for the Eagles, was just following Green. He didn't pick a side of the field, he just followed Green wherever he went. And
I think he's one of the best in the league, Darius Slay. I think when you see elite players at poor teams like the Detroit Lions and their talents have been wasted, it's a shame to see. But I think if the Eagles can get on track and shake those injuries, I think Darius Slay can be a big piece for their defensive secondary. Definitely.
And the last point I've got here for the Bengals is an interesting wee stat between the 2 Mike Thomases in the league. So the Bengals receiver Mike Thomas has had 8 catches for 57 yards and a touchdown, and New Orleans Michael Thomas has only had 3 catches for 17 yards. I know that Michael Thomas has been injured, but it's just for any of those playing fantasy, don't pick up the wrong Mike Thomas.
I wish you'd told me that a month ago, because Michael Thomas was my first round pick in the draft. So obviously with injuries, and we'll get to that when we talk about the Saints. But yeah, that's a very interesting fact. If you'd told me that at the start of the season, I might not have believed you.
I had absolutely no idea, Mikey, that Michael Thomas was your first pick. That's not at all the reason I brought that up there.
Yeah, I thought that.
The last point I
For,
want to
for,
make. Oh, on you go, Kai.
I was just going to say, for those of you who aren't aware yet, Mikey and Adam have a rather heated running battle for the fantasy title. I feel like a referee in the middle of this at times. Having not met ever in the 3 years that they've been in the league, they've somehow managed to create somewhat of a rivalry. To the extent that Adam set them up to play each other week 1.
Oh yeah, Mikey was the defending champion, and I just had to put him in his place, so I made sure to beat him week 1.
I think it is safe to say though that it is a healthy relationship. There's no bad blood whatsoever, unless he beats me this week.
Exactly. Well, you see, that's the thing. We've managed to get this rivalry again without ever having met before. So
I know.
that's really impressive.
That's what it's all about. That's what fantasy football is all about.
Exactly. Just before we move on to the next game, I just have a little stat here. When I was watching the Eagles game, I found this out from the commentary team, I think, and it was fairly interesting. In 2008, Donovan McNabb, who was a Philly QB, said, "I never even knew it was in the rule book," in reference to a tie, because they had a tie in 2008 between the Bengals and the Eagles, 13-13, and at the end of that overtime period, he was ready to go back out to go and try and score more points. He'd been with Philly since 1999, playing in 12 overtime games in that time, and never knew the rule was there for a tie to happen.
That was one thing that I was worried about with Joe Burrow, because obviously in NCAA, in the college football when he was at LSU, I think it was I want to say it was Texas that they played, and it went to 7 overtimes, because if one team scores a touchdown, the other can still go up the field and score a touchdown, which is obviously different in the NFL. So I wasn't sure that if Joe Burrow knew about that. I was excited to see if Eagles had scored a touchdown if Joe Burrow wanted to bring his offense out to try and score one as well.
Well, if we're happy that we've covered the poor show from Kai's Eagles there, then we'll move on to another team from the same division who also had a poor show, and that was the New York Giants, who were hosting the San Francisco 49ers. So the 49ers didn't have to travel too far, seeing as last week they played at MetLife as well against the Jets. And San Francisco managed to win that game fairly comfortably, you would say, 36-9. And again, the first point I have here, I was speaking before the podcast, is just I've written down, Giants are bad. And that's all I've written down for this.
Well, next to my wee graph of this division, with obviously Washington, the Cowboys, Eagles, and the Giants, I've just wrote that it's a stinker of a division. There's not a lot going on, and especially with the Giants down there, they look very poor. The second lowest points scored so far this year, and the highest points deficit in the league. They're minus 41 for points through 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think the less said about the Giants, the better. Even with Saquon in the team, I thought they would probably have a top 10 draft pick this season. But even without him out, I really think that the two New York teams are going to have the 1 and 2 in the draft this season. But I just want to give a shout out to Nick Mullins, who I know is a massive fan of this podcast. He'll probably be listening, no doubt. I thought he was brilliant on Sunday. I thought he was really well, with 49ers missing 9 total starters on both sides of the field. I thought Nick Mullins was excellent. He's called upon when needed. I remember when Jimmy Garoppolo got injured 2 seasons ago, and Nick Mullins came in and had another good game, I think, when he was a rookie. So, yeah, credit to them for bringing in Nick Mullins, and we'll see what happens next week with the quarterback situation.
The one question I have about Mullins is, I agree, Mullins looked good. And I query if it's that Mullins looked good, or if really that team doesn't need a good quarterback. They just need, like, the system aids the quarterback. Because, like, everyone says that Jimmy Garoppolo's quite good, but is he actually that good? Because we've only really seen him properly for the 49ers in this system, and Mullins has looked good as well when he's played in it. So do they actually, are they both good quarterbacks, or is it just the system that makes it look like a good quarterback?
Yeah, I think one thing I was thinking of is, as much as I like Jimmy Garoppolo and I thought that he was the heir to the throne in New England, but I do think if you put someone like Lamar Jackson in that San Francisco offense, it would be scary good, because I feel that the 49ers and the Ravens are both run heavy, but if you had a more elite level quarterback, no disrespect to Mullins or Garoppolo, I think they would have maybe had a ring on their fingers this season rather than the Chiefs. But they could prove me wrong. I think they're one of the strongest rosters in the NFL. So I wouldn't be surprised if I seen them in the NFC Championship game again. But I've got another couple of teams I think might get there instead.
Especially, like you say, with their roster depth, especially with so many injuries coming into the weekend and going into that game. I think I myself stupidly wrote them off and thought the Giants might have managed to win it, but fair play to them. They've got a good depth. They've got a lot of good players to come in when they need to step up, and they've definitely shown it on Sunday there that they're a force to be reckoned with. Across three running backs, each of them got a touchdown. So good.
Yeah,
good signs.
Just a quick question to you both about fantasy. I mean, they've got 3 home games next, the 49ers. I think Jimmy Garoppolo will be back this week, but if you have injuries to any of your rostered quarterbacks and they play Philly, Miami, and then the Rams, are you thinking about bringing one of them in if you've got any injury or bye concerns, or are you looking elsewhere?
One of the running backs? Or
quarterbacks, Mullins or Jimmy G?
That's a good question.
I think if Garoppolo is fit, you're more likely to bring him in, obviously, than Mullins, because then Mullins is null and void. But I would still be slightly sceptical about bringing them in.
Personally, I think you'll be able to find each of those individual weeks a streaming quarterback that's going to be of a higher quality than what Garoppolo will probably give there. Because, as you say, they rush so much that most of their scoring plays really are rush. I know. Obviously, he's passing a lot of the time to the running back as well, but really, that it's the rushing game that's viable there. Because if I said to you, who's their number one wide receiver? Like, there's so many that they have there. We don't actually know who is the number one. Because I'm not saying that they're bad. Folk like Brandon Ayuk, looks like he's a great prospect and stuff. But there's no one like when they had Emmanuel Sanders last year, who was kind of that big name that you wanted there. Like, I mean, Mohamed Sanu was making a lot of important catches, and he's been passed about the NFL quite a lot recently. So I personally, I wouldn't pick up Garoppolo.
No, I don't even think even when Samuel comes back and slots himself into that team, I don't even think you'll find him taking the bulk of the receptions. I think we'll still stick with our run game and try and spread it across more than just him.
Yeah. Well, quickly, just talking for any unfortunate Giant fans that are out there, your rushing game was really bad. Devonta Freeman, who came in to replace Barkley, 5 attempts, 10 yards.
Monster game.
And Wayne Gallman, 4 attempts, 7 yards.
Yeah, I think Kai picked him up off the waivers, and we were obviously playing each other this week, and he wasn't sure whether to play him or not. I think even though I got the win this week, I'm pretty sure it was the right decision to leave him on your bench.
Yeah, I think so. I think there was too much uncertainty behind how well he would fit in. I don't think at any point I expected it to be a straight swap between the kind of production you would get out of him that you would get out of Saquon, but it looks a bit bleak for the Giants at the moment.
My professional fantasy football tip for anyone who has any Giants players is just drop them all. Personally, I wouldn't roster any, whether it be Slayton or Shepard in the receiving game. Ingram, I wouldn't be starting him. I think you can find a better tight end to stream. Daniel Jones, when he showed well last year, has not been great so far this year, and nothing in that backfield interests me either. So
I feel like it's not just Giants, the New York Giants. I feel like this is just a New York statement. Drop everyone in New York.
Drop them all.
Very possibly.
I feel like this is slowly becoming a New York hate podcast for the NFL.
We'll see. I have one last question for this game here. Okay, could San Francisco be the team with the most wins at MetLife Stadium? They've won 2 games at MetLife. Do you think the Giants or the Jets will win more than 2 games at home?
I'd like to think combined. The Giants
between the two of them,
I'm not
will
asking
pick up at least 3 wins.
I'm not
but
asking
again,
combined.
as we said, it would not surprise me. They have been awful this season.
An individual team, or San Francisco?
An individual team. I wouldn't be surprised if potentially they end up tied with one of the two of them. Because as we say, they both look very, very poor. But you never know. Stranger things have happened.
Yeah, well, definitely the Buffalo Bills are the best team in New York State at the moment, aren't they?
Massive.
So,
yes.
If we've got nothing else to say about that game, I'm happy to move on to the next one in the list here, which was the Las Vegas Raiders travelling to New England. The score was 20 to 36, with New England winning that game. It was fairly close in the first half, looking back at the game.
Yeah.
And then kind of stretched away at the end of that. New England running game. There was less Cam this week, but the running backs, they seem to have Burkhead, Michelle, and I'll be honest, rookie JJ Taylor, who I'd never heard of before, seemed to be having quite a lot of rushing attempts. So
Rex Burkhead coming out of nowhere.
I think a lot of that, correct me if I'm wrong, will have something to do with James White, who, if anyone doesn't know, unfortunately, a couple of weeks ago, his father passed away and his mother's in a critical condition in the hospital. So he's not been playing the past couple of weeks. But personally, I think when he comes back, he'll take all that off of Burkhead.
Yeah.
Last year, Burkhead had a week 3 breakout game, and then the next week had 1 snap. So
this is the thing with Rex Burkhead is I'm pretty sure both of you as well are probably looking at the waiver wire ads for this week in fantasy and thinking, oh, he's had a big game, they'll bring him in. But we all know that he does have one big game in him a season, but then nothing else happens. So, I mean, he could prove me wrong, but I thought that I just love a Bill Belichick offense. I just think that they're so clever. First 2 weeks, Cam had massive games, and I think the Raiders, who are 2-0 going into this game, were thinking, how do we stop Cam? And that was the last of the worries because the run game was so good.
I don't think anyone would ever have predicted that, though. If you looked at, before the season started, if you looked at who New England had in their run game and who they had to pick from as, their running back one, I don't think you would ever have seen them as a strong running game. I think that was part of what Cam Newton came in to fix. But like you've said, it looks like they might have found something from somewhere, and JJ Taylor. Could he be the one to replace the aging run game?
Well, you see, I feel as if you've still got to, like, Sony Michel was drafted to be that running game. Like, it's not often that Belichick picks such a high draft pick for a running back as he did with Michel, because he got him at the end of the first round. And then also last year you had Damian Harris, who was drafted as well, again, to be that running back. Like, there's so many folk in that backfield, I don't think you could pick anyone. I think Belichick, we've seen historically, Belichick likes to pick, to kind of jump between all these different running backs, a big committee in there. Personally, I don't see Taylor as the future there. I think he's just going to work his way around everyone again, and you'll end up with 5 or 6 folk. You'll never be able to start anyone in that Pats backfield.
Yeah, I think talking fantasy terms, as a running back by committee over there. So I wouldn't feel comfortable starting any running backs in fantasy, not even in the flex, depending on the matchup, even if it was a favourable one. As a unit, as a NFL team, I think the run game is brilliant there, always has been, but in terms of fantasy, I would stay clear of all of them.
Don't get me wrong, if I had a space that I could put in my team as Patriots running back, and I wouldn't have to pick one, I just have to pick the one that was good that week.
Got the highest.
In there. I would put Patriots running back as position every week, because they'll always have someone that does something amazing. But actually picking what one it's going to be, no. Yeah. I don't think
one type of league actually that I've heard about recently is a Powerball league. So you draft players, but you don't set a lineup, and your highest scoring potential lineup is your lineup for that week. So I think in those kind of leagues, if you bring in a Patriots running back, you're gonna get a good game out of one of them at least a couple of times in the season.
I was going to say not often, but maybe that one week you'll get a good one. I've got a couple of notes I've got here as well. Was that Darren Waller was kept fairly quiet by the Patriots D, but I think that's just because the Patriots defense are really good, and I'm sure Waller will be back to his usual centre of that passing offense next week. And a little debate I had, I don't think we have to have it, to be honest, because I think the answer is both, but it was Brady versus Belichick. Who really was the mastermind in that Patriots team? And I think, to be honest, Belichick's great, as we've seen so far this season, and Brady himself was great, as we've seen when he's moved to Tampa Bay.
I think that it's obviously two sides of the coin, but Belichick can work with anyone. I mean, if he brought in Hoyer or Jarrett Stidham at the start of the season and didn't bring in Cam, I reckon they'd probably still be 2-1 just now, if I'm completely honest. And that takes nothing away from Cam Newton. But with Tom Brady, I think it's more difficult to prove that he was the better side of that divorce. But I mean, they've both got winning records just now, and I would love to see them face each other somewhere down the line.
Yeah, definitely. Has anyone got anyone else to add? To be honest, I didn't have a lot to talk about in this game.
No, there's not really a lot to say. It wasn't, like you say, it wasn't the most exciting game in the world. It was kind of run of the mill. Not a lot of big talking points. The only small thing I would say is how widespread the receptions were for the Las Vegas Raiders. They don't really seem to have one guy to target, especially with Henry Ruggs not involved.
I think a lot of that as well, as I say, was down to Waller being just shut down completely by that
So
Patriots
quiet.
defense.
Yeah.
Because normally a lot of the targets go toward Waller because he's just that big target. But we'll see
He's
what
huge.
happens. See what happens in future weeks. Definitely, yeah. Moving on to the next, we're working our way through these 1 o'clock kickoffs now, and it's the Tennessee Titans, who I'm sure later on we'll be talking about them in a wee bit more detail with some of the news that's come out. Traveling to play the Minnesota Vikings. The game finished 31-30 to Tennessee. Gostkowski, I'm glad to see after his horrendous week 1 on primetime television, has actually managed to continue his good kicking form. 6 for 6, including I think 3 of them were over 50 yards, those kicks. And I've also got noted down here 2 great runners, Henry against Cook here, both of them over 100 yards rushing. I think both those teams really want to be run first with those running backs, and they appear to be playing like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Vikings, Dalvin Cook, 181 rushing yards this week. He got his touchdown, but 22 rushing attempts. It looks as if they're very much focusing on him, as you would. But I think the biggest talking point on that Vikings offense would have been Justin Jefferson.
I've got that down. Yeah, breakout for Jefferson.
Sorry, I've beat you to it. He looks like he could kind of be starting to find his feet now. That big season touchdown and his wee dance back into play. I think he could be one to look out for again this season.
Yeah, I watched a lot of LSU games last year, and I just thought he was phenomenal. And he was one player in the draft I was desperate for the Packers to select, but obviously we drafted up for Jordan Love instead. But
that worked well.
So this is a weird one because I don't think the Vikings were bad this week. I don't think their D is the same as what they once were. They gave up 440 yards of total offense from the Titans, but I mean the Vikings are 0-3 when they could be 3-0, and the Bears are 3-0 when they could be 0-3, and they're both in the NFC North with the Packers. So I mean I'm not complaining that the Vikings are 0-3, but I just feel that obviously there's a point in this. Gostkowski I think has been clutch all 3 games apart from the first 3 quarters of the first game. But I think Titans are slowly piecing together a really, really good team. They're obviously 1 win off the Super Bowl last year. I really like Mike Vrabel. I think he's the perfect coach for them. And I was actually talking to Kai on Sunday. In a weird way, I actually don't think Derrick Henry had that good a game. I feel like the first 2 weeks he was just slowly working the way up the field for the Titans, and then Tannehill was thrown to Jonnu Smith or someone else, Corey Davis. This week he obviously got 2 touchdowns, but he is that kind of player that will just slowly work his way up the field and just rack up maybe 5-yard chunks as he goes, but take nothing away from him. I mean, I've got him. I think he was my 2nd round pick in the draft. So I hope this continues, but I mean, the Titans just all round, even without AJ Brown, look fantastic this season.
Yeah, that's what you've got to factor in as well, is not really having AJ Brown for the past 2 weeks, and they've still managed to look very good. The likes of Corey Davis and, like you said earlier, Adam Jonnu Smith as well. They look like they've got a lot of options, so you know they could maybe go and push on one further this year. I think it will be harder, but it does look like they've built themselves a good team off the back of last year as well.
Just for those wondering how Mikey managed to get Derrick Henry in the 2nd round, we only play in an 8-team league because, as I'm sure you can hear from us, we're not American. We come from the west coast of Scotland, So there's not a huge amount of us in the league. So it's an 18 league,
No.
and that's how we managed to get. I'm imagining a lot of folk going, "How is he managing to drop to about the 20th pick?" No.
Also in saying that, I know most people draft running backs in the first round because they're a lot more valuable and less elite players in that position. But I took Michael Thomas because he came to me at the 5th pick and I couldn't turn him up. And I didn't think any running backs were going to get back to me, but Sean Flynn had the last pick in the first round and the first pick in the second, and he picked up 2 wide receivers, which has actually came back to. I mean, he's the only undefeated team in the league just now, but I was very surprised with that, and that's why Derrick Henry fell to me in the second round.
Did Sean tell you had to drop his name in this podcast? Is that?
Yeah. He's my sponsor.
He's your sponsor.
Name drop.
I get free pizza.
My last thing I've got noted down for this game, because though I say it was a high scoring game, I feel as if it went as we really expected. Obviously, Jefferson breaking out, kind of replacing Diggs as people expected them to be there. But I've just got ridiculous catch from Rudolph. It was
God,
unbelievable.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a touchdown at first when I was watching it. I didn't think he dragged that second foot down, but this guy is huge, massive, one of the biggest tight ends in the league, and he dances about like a very small wide receiver. So yeah, credit to him. That was an amazing catch, and
I would go as far as saying that's one of the best touchdown receptions I think I've seen in the time that I've watched American football.
I mean, it was definitely one of the best I saw at the weekend.
Okay, right. We've gone in slightly different directions there.
No, but I don't think it was good.
I don't think Kyle Rudolph is a fantasy viable tight end, but as much as I'm a Packers fan, I love to see him. I think he's just a really, really good tight end.
Yep, totally agree. I think he's good. I think he's very solid. He's the sort of one that those talk a while back that he might be getting replaced in Minnesota, and I think they eventually came to their senses and kept him there because he's really quite good.
It's big shoes to fill.
Yeah, exactly. Moving on to our next game, which was the I'll make sure and say this right, the Washington football team were away at the Cleveland Browns. The Browns won 34-20, and I've got down here again, just going through my notes, that Chubb and Hunt, both of them great on the ground. That 1-2 punch seems to be amazing, and obviously they've got Kevin Stefanski over there now, who's now the offensive coordinator, who was at the Vikings, and you saw how good the Vikings run game was last season, and I think he's moved that to the Browns here. And just to back up the Browns being a run first team, stat here that I don't know if you know, but when Baker Mayfield has had to pass the ball 26 times or fewer in a game, the Browns are 6-1.
Oh my gosh!
So I don't know if that is a good thing, saying that if your quarterback doesn't have to throw it, you win the game.
You know, does that look bad on Baker Mayfield?
Especially as a number one pick, but certainly when Baker doesn't have to pass the ball that often, the Browns are winning.
Yeah, on you go, Kai. Sorry.
No, that's fine. You just look at the stats for Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry, who you would put as two of the better two receivers in the league. Odell Beckham obviously being one of the elite ones. He's only got 4 receptions at the weekend. They've combined him and Landry for less than 10, with only 10 targets between them. It looks as if, like you say, maybe that the 1-2 punch with Chubb and Hunt is the way the Browns are going, and they're maybe looking away from having to force Mayfield to throw the ball as much.
Yeah, I think as much as this was a good Browns win, I think Dwayne Haskins lost this game for the Washington football team. I mean, he threw, I think he had 4 turnovers in total, which turned into 24 points for the Browns off those turnovers, which is massive. But in saying that, this is the first time since 2014 that the Browns are above 500. They've got a winning record for the first time in 6 years. Don't know how long that'll last. I mean, they're away to Dallas this week, and then they've got the Colts, Steelers, and then a divisional game against the Bengals. So I'd like to think it could be a turning point for the Browns, but you never know. That's the thing. That's probably the biggest quote ever. You never know with the Browns. They could lose the next 4 straight. They could win them. So who knows? But all I can say is I think it'll be exciting to watch them.
Yep, I totally agree. I think I don't know if I'd use the word exciting. I think I think they're going to be run heavy. And don't get me wrong, I love seeing a run heavy team. I also think you have to be wired slightly differently. Like some of them are to run at people. Like
Yeah.
there's some running backs who are like
They're not looking
avoiding-
for space.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the only thing Derrick Henry knows how to do.
Very true. I feel Nick Chubb is that kind of role in the Browns offense, and then they put Hunt in the field for him to kind of dance around people, you know. But certainly, I think they're going to be a good team if they can get Baker to not pass the ball. I think they'll do quite well.
They'll do well for sure.
Yeah, and saying that though, how do you feel about OBJ's usage? Like this week, he only had 6 targets, 4 receptions for 59 yards. Do you think his talents have been wasted in Cleveland? Like
That's
massively.
That's what I've got down here. As I've just written the sentence: when is Beckham going to be good again? Especially for fantasy, because he just so far this year certainly hasn't been. And most of his time in Cleveland, he's not been that great.
Yeah, like as I said, you look at the upcoming games and you try and think about the defensive units in these teams: Cowboys, Colts, Steelers. I mean, 3 very good defensive
Really
units
good
up against
defensive.
OBJ. Yeah. What are the chances that we're going to see 20 plus carries from both running backs and barely anything from Jarvis Landry and OBJ? I think that's what we predict to see, but who knows? I do feel for OBJ. I think he's one of the best quality wide receivers, but he's just not getting a chance to show it at the time with the Cleveland Browns.
Yep, I have down here the last 2 points was that Haskins looks inexperienced, and I know that's obvious because he's only had a season's worth of playing in the NFL, but he really didn't look very good. I'm wondering if one of the other quarterbacks in that QB room
Bring in Alex Smith
after the recovery for that injury. That would be unbelievable.
Yeah. That's
back in the
one
pitch.
thing I spoke to Kai about a month back was the comeback player of the year award. If Alex Smith plays 1 snap of football this season, does he win that award?
Oh, has to.
He has to.
I think they should just change the name of the award to the Alex Smith comeback player of the year, because
100%.
the guy was looking death in the face, and he's had 19 surgeries and told he was never going to walk again, and now he's training with the Washington football team. It's crazy.
And did you see the clip at the start of the season in training camp with Haskins and Smith both throwing the same ball?
Yeah.
And it was like night and day.
Smith throws it like an absolute dart right on the money. I think your ones where Dwayne Haskins throws it like a heavy turnip.
Yes,
I think was how you said.
I think that might have been the phrase I used.
The thing is as well that when Alex Smith went down with the injury, they were winning their division. They had a winning record. I can't remember what the record was off the top of my head at the time. Patrick Mahomes says that a lot of his success is down to Alex Smith. Do I feel he deserves another chance? Massively. But again, do I feel Dwayne Haskins deserves a chance to prove himself? Yes. So it's a difficult situation there in a team that's got enough difficult decisions to deal with. So I think the quarterback issues is probably the last thing on their mind at the moment.
Yeah. Did anyone have any money on Dontrell Inman catching 2 touchdowns?
Yeah, I had $1,000 on it.
Oh, did you? Yeah. I'm imagining you're now a millionaire. I don't have anything else to add on that game, unless any of you do.
No, there's not much to say really.
No. So the next game in that 1 o'clock slate was the LA Rams traveling to the Buffalo Bills.
This was a good game.
This was a good game to watch. The
Game
Bills,
of the week, for sure.
Bills won 35-32. And basically the Bills tried to throw that game away at the end of it. They were 28-3 up halfway through the third quarter, and they nearly lost that game.
Falcons would have thrown it away.
We'll get onto them next, don't we? It's the third game this season. There's only been 3 games, but every single game this season, Josh Allen's been over 300 passing yards.
Yeah, he looks very, very good. Looks like he's kind of found his feet. He's got off to a good start. The introduction of Stephon Diggs on through there as well. He's got himself an elite receiver to target. The Bills look very impressive. As much as they did try and throw it away, they look good.
Just quickly talking about Diggs, he had 1 touchdown. Should he have had more?
Yeah, I mean, I have him in fantasy. So, I mean, the first one that he put over the line, I was ecstatic about. Obviously, got rightly pulled back. The second one, off the back of that play, got pulled back again for an offensive foul. So yeah, I was like I say, I was ecstatic when he eventually got his third one. But
I think he was ecstatic as well. He literally just kicked the ball as far as he could into the air. I think in a weird way, I know Sean McVay is a perfectionist, and I know they were leading with 30 seconds to go in the game, but I don't think Sean McVay will come out of this too disheartened. I think the Rams played well. Me and Kai both had the Rams to beat the Bills in the picks this week. I was all in the Rams this week, as much as the Bills have been doing well, but Josh Allen's just proved that he could potentially be piecing together another MVP caliber season. I think this one was all Josh Allen.
That's what I've got written down as Josh Allen MVP.
Yeah.
Yep.
If he keeps up this form, I think he's got to be at the win.
As someone who has an interest in Devin Singletary, because I thought he was going to be great coming into the league, and he did okay once he eventually got the job in Buffalo. When he did get halfway through the year, and then they drafted Zach Moss, I was very worried for Singletary because Zach Moss was going to take most of the the goal line work. But obviously Zach Moss wasn't playing this game, and I feel Singletary did not bad in that backfield by himself. I don't think he's probably done enough to keep it to himself. I think Zach Moss is certainly going to come back in there. But certainly, I think with Allen's rushing ability, you've always got a sneaky play with a Bills running back, because they're maybe not expecting, especially on the goal line, for that Bills running back to be doing anything, because Allen's so good with his legs.
You saw that at the weekend. Probably one of the best opportunities they had to put Singletary in and get him over the goal line. Josh Allen just took himself.
Yeah, I don't think Josh Allen gets the credit that he deserves for being a Russian quarterback. I think his numbers are fantastic as a Russian quarterback. I think if the Bills had a more in the pocket thrower that wasn't as good with the legs, I think Devin Singletary's usage would be up a lot more. But it's the same as you've seen with the Patriots. That Cam Newton is probably the best goal line Russian quarterback of all time. So he's going to be taking a lot of touchdowns away from the likes of Singletary and Moss. With Josh Allen, and the same with Cam Newton and the Patriots. So I think Josh Allen is going to have a very good season, judging by the first 3 weeks of the season.
Yep. Moving on to the Rams side of the ball, I feel Woods and Cup, the two of them are just going to be good all season, because if Goff's going to throw the ball, he's basically going to throw it to the two of them. If he doesn't throw it to Higbee. But on the ground, I found quite interesting that you had Henderson over 100 yards rushing, and I have a question for the two of you, if you think it's going to be the same once Cam Akers is back, because obviously he was missing this week.
I think he'll still have a very large role to play. I think he's proved it when everyone else has been out. You obviously had Brown in the picture as well, but he seems to have dropped down the pecking order now that Henderson's kind of shown what he's worth. I think Cam Akers will come in and take quite a bit of that off him. I think from what we've heard, Cam Akers is going to be the guy there. But no, I think there's still definitely positives to Darrell Henderson. I definitely think he'll still be a big part of that offense. Will he be as fantasy relevant? I'm not too sure. You might find his points start to drop off a wee bit, but certainly of interest.
The one cool thing I find about the Rams is that they've went into league settings, and turned off cap space. They're literally just paying absolutely everyone and anyone at the moment. I don't know how they're affording it. I think Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods just got an extension. I don't know how they're paying these players so much, but Jalen Ramsey as well got a massive deal in the off season. So I think these players are motivated to prove their worth. I don't think, as I said, this is as heavy a loss to take as you would think. And I think the Rams are definitely going to bounce back. I really like the look of them this season.
Yep, can't disagree with that. I do think the Rams are good. I think, to be honest, that whole NFC West, I think they could all finish above a 500 record, to be honest. I don't have anything else to talk about in that game. Do you?
No, it's not really a lot to say. I think as much as it was the game of the week, I think it was all very, very obvious what the big...
Very expected.
Two very good teams who will both probably have a very good run.
I'm imagining both of those are playoff teams.
You would like to think so.
So our next game, talking about leads that get thrown away.
Here we go.
Chicago at Atlanta, 30 points to 26. Chicago managed to win that game. And here is the stat that I'm sure you all already know, but I'll tell you anyway. Atlanta is the only team in NFL history to lose back-to-back games while leading by 15 plus points in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. On top of that,
Insane.
no team has blown multiple 15-point fourth quarter leads in a single season. Like, nobody. And they have actually done it in back-to-back weeks. I don't know why Dan Quinn has started the season as head coach at the Falcons. That was one of the biggest surprises to me in the offseason. I thought they would have got rid of him. I just feel, I mean, at the start of last season, I was all in on Matt Ryan. I'm a big fan of Matt Ryan. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley is obviously going to become a huge player for them. I worry that they are wasting the final years of Julio Jones and Matt Ryan's time in Atlanta to win a Super Bowl as long as Dan Quinn's in charge.
The thing is, it's nothing to do with their offense. They've scored 90 points. And they're 0-3. 90 points. They're 0-3. It's ridiculous.
I mean, like you've mentioned, they have one of the most promising offensive weapons this season in Calvin Ridley. He looks like he could be very, very good. I know he only had 5 receptions at the weekend, but they were for 110 yards. So he seems to be getting quite a few deep balls.
Well, talking about deep balls for Ridley, okay? Ridley, with 550 air yards on his targets, okay, has got more air yards than the whole of the New York Jets, the whole of the LA Rams, and the whole of the New Orleans Saints. He's got more air yards, just him, than those 3 not combined, just in total for those 3 teams, which I find is unbelievable.
Again, as much as there's no getting away from it that the Falcons threw away this game, like the Bears D, I thought were fantastic. The Falcons only converted 4 of 13 third down attempts, which is massive. Again, as much as I'm a Packers fan and I dislike the Chicago Bears, couldn't be happier for Nick Foles. He looks like he's going to be the starter for the Bears. The new era in Chicago could be 0-3 at the moment. I mean, they came fourth quarter comebacks against the Lions and the Falcons, and then when they played the Giants in week 2, Daniel Jones failed to find the end zone in the last game, play the game. So they could be 0-3, but they're not. They're 3-0. And I really think that Nick Foles is going to do a really good job for them. I was hoping that he was going to do well at the Jags, and I'm glad that he's found a new home in Chicago. So just not as good as the Packers, hopefully.
Do we think Trubisky's done?
I think so. I believe that they didn't pick up his extra year contract on his rookie.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So I think that says it all when a team says when you pick a first round pick and you're not going to extend him past their rookie contract. It'll be interesting to see where he goes. Does he end up becoming a player like Josh Rosen, who just was a first round pick and doesn't end up doing anything? So but again, couldn't be happier for Nick Foles. Ever since that Super Bowl winning run, I think he's captured everybody's imaginations in American football, no matter what team you support. So let's just hope that the Packers still finish first in the division.
I mean, when Nick Foles came in, they were 26-10 down going into the fourth quarter, like you say, and he's managed to throw 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, get his team over the line. I think you're worried if you're Trubisky there.
Yeah, and the usage that he had and the connection with Allen Robinson and Miller as well. I think they'll be more than happy that Nick Foles is their quarterback for next week.
I think it's also been confirmed by Matt Nagy that Foles is the quarterback.
And he also said that not just for this week, it's for the foreseeable future, Nick Foles will be the starting quarterback. But is this a case of Foles starts the first half, Trubisky comes in and plays more snaps in the second half? I don't think so, but you never know.
My last question about this game is, how are the Bears 3-0?
It's a weird one.
I don't know. I really don't know. That I mean, the only thing stopping them being top of that division is the fact that the Packers are also 3-0.
The fantastic Green Bay Packers.
The Packers.
The fantastic Green Bay Packers.
It's a weird one. As we said, the Bears are 3-0, could be 0-3. Vikings are 0-3, could be 3-0. Like it's I've always said, and I'm not just saying this as a Packers fan, I think that the NFC North is one of the best divisions, not including the Detroit Lions. I think there's always 3 teams that could reach the playoffs every year. It's maybe not looking like that for the Vikings this year, but it'll be interesting to see both teams going forward if the Vikings can pick up wins or if the Bears' luck runs out pretty soon.
Side note, I took Vikings to win that division at the start of the year.
Well, you've lost a lot of money.
So we'll just move on from that very quickly.
Definitely. We'll move on to the next game then, which was Carolina at the Chargers. Carolina won 21-16. And my first note here is Mike Davis the new Christian McCaffrey? He seems to have taken on that role.
In my opinion, Aaron Jones is the new Christian McCaffrey. But no, I think Mike Davis had a good game. In terms of stand-in players for those elite running backs, with Tony Pollard and things like that, I think he's done very well. I was surprised in week 2 when CMC went out how many receptions Davis has had, because I've not heard much about him, but looks like a good player to play while CMC is injured. Once McCaffrey's back off IR, I still think you'll see quite a lot of Mike Davis.
And in this game, Mike Davis had 13 rushing attempts for 46 yards, and he had 8 catches for 45 yards and a touchdown.
He seems pretty versatile. It looks like managed to use him, obviously.
See, I'm not too
in
sure.
Both situations, but he's not a very agile guy, is he? He's quite a big.
When he was at Seattle behind Carson, I wasn't hugely impressed with him. Then he went to Chicago, and somehow David Montgomery managed to do him out of a job. And if David Montgomery's doing you out of a job, you can't be that great. And now he's come here, but he's mad. Is it the system, maybe? Is it just that Teddy Bridgewater's just wanting to dump everything off to the running back because he's used to doing it with McCaffrey?
Yeah, I think Bridgewater's not a deep ball thrower, which will, well, in saying that, I mean, Robbie Anderson's had some big games to start the season for the Panthers, but I think we all knew that at the start of the season Bridgewater was going to play those little passes to tight ends and running backs, especially with McCaffrey, and Davis is just going to be the new person that he's going to do that to while McCaffrey's out.
I've got down here that the Panthers are 1-2, but personally I think they're a better team than that record. I think they could push for one of those playoff places, to be honest.
I think we're unlucky against the Buccaneers, but in saying that was when McCaffrey was playing, and we all know that Davis is a better running back than CMC. So, yes.
Unfortunately, my offer in the fantasy to the Christian McCaffrey owner was not accepted when I tried to palm off David Johnson and try and get McCaffrey, claiming that a couple of weeks worth of injury would compensate the value, which appeared to not.
I'm not surprised at that in the slightest.
No. Moving on to the Chargers, I've just written down Eckler's back. Everyone was worried that, maybe Eckler's not going to be that pass catching back, but he had 11 catches this week.
Yeah, he was only 2 shy of Keenan Allen,
which is ridiculous.
For catches, which is crazy considering Keenan Allen is an elite receiver and very much their first choice receiver there. But he didn't go very far on the ground. 12 attempts for 60 yards. It's not a bad return with a touchdown, but it looks like you say, as a pass catcher running back, he seems to have taken that role.
Well, Herbert had 49 pass attempts in this game, and he targeted Keenan Allen 19 times.
I know.
That's two-fifths of your targets are at the one play. Like, surely at one point the defence must go, wait a minute, he's just trying to pass it to him all the time.
I think I have Austin Eckler in another league that I play in, and it's a one flex league because we play with a kicker, and I was
you don't like kickers in the PHFL.
Unsure on whether to play Austin Eckler or Keenan Allen in my flex, and I mean I think they both roughly had around about the same points, but I went with Eckler because I just think he, again, one of the best pass catching running backs in the league, and I don't think there's anything to worry about for Austin Eckler owners in fantasy. I think he's going to continue to have strong showings.
One more question. Does Tyrod Taylor get back in when he is recovered from his punctured lung that the medical professional gave him?
I think he'll be too busy in court suing the doctors.
No, I don't think so. I don't think anyone would have expected to see Justin Herbert this early in the season. Obviously, he came under slightly bizarre circumstances, like you say. But I think he's kind of shown that he can. He's not. Obviously, it's his second game in the NFL. Off the back of the weekend, there's still obviously a long, long way to come. But with 49 passing attempts, I don't think he's short of confidence.
No, certainly not. I mean, when his first game was against the Kansas City Chiefs, and he'd had such
and
a
he
good
took them to overtime.
Yeah, that's another team that I think that their records could look a lot better. Judging on some of these games have been very tight to start the season. But I mean, the Chargers go on the road to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and then the New Orleans Saints. If they lose those games back to back and Justin Herbert doesn't play well, do they bring in Tyrod Taylor for the Jets and then the Dolphins and then the Jacksonville Jaguars, or do they stick with Herbert and hope for a good showing? So that remains to be seen. But I wouldn't be surprised if they brought Tyrod Taylor back. I still think Justin Herbert has a lot to learn. But I don't know if you've watched Hard Knocks. Justin Herbert just seems like a very likable guy. I know Kai
So
agrees with
laid
that.
back.
So,
Nothing phases him.
yeah, and as Kai said, he's not short in confidence at all at the moment. So I'd like to see them stick with Justin Herbert for the future.
Just looking at those fixtures that you're talking about, I think a lot of Chargers fans were hoping that Taylor would still be playing just now through those fixtures, and then you give Herbert the games against those easier teams later on.
Massively.
But
absolutely. I think that was what a lot of Charger fans were thinking. Because if Herbert comes out with the confidence that he did in his debut against the Chiefs, against those three teams that we just mentioned, that they could have won those three games, and Herbert could have looked like the saviour for them.
Yep. Anything else to add in that game, or are we happy to move on?
I mean, and like obviously just the quick mention of Joshua Kelly, who after week 2 looked like he could be not fantasy relevant, but he looks like he's a very suitable backup to Austin Eckler.
It looked like they were going to use him as a kind of 1-2 punch, like they did with Gordon.
Yeah,
and Eckler,
it kind of tailed off a wee bit this week, but yeah, it still looks as if he could be good. It looks as if he could be a very good option for them. When Eckler's obviously the focus, they bring Kelly in and he can do a bit of work as well.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on to our next game. It's unfortunately another one of those New York teams. The Jets away to the Colts. Colts won 36-7. The Colts starters I've got down here, they came out the game after 3 quarters and they put in their backups. Are the Jets tanking for Trevor?
Yeah, I have one note, and it just says the less said about Jets, the better. Like, I think that they'll be picking up Trevor Lawrence in the draft. I really do. I think they're going to have the worst record in the league. But that's not a shot at Sam Darnold. I think Darnold is a very good quarterback. I just think he's in the wrong system.
Adam Gase is the problem.
Yeah, I've got it in block capitals. Adam Gase out. I think him and Dan Quinn at the Falcons, they're the two managers that are probably head coaches that are probably on the hot seat at the moment. The Jets fans organised something to get Adam Gase out. A protest. Sorry, I was trying to think of the word there. They were trying to organise a protest to get Adam Gase out when he's only managed 3 games for the Jets. So, I'm all out on the Jets this season. I think they've got the number 1 pick.
How much of a bounty do you think they'll be able to pick up if they get Trevor? This is hypothetical. How much do you think another team would pay for Sam Darnold? They wouldn't keep both of them, obviously. So how much do you think they'll trade for?
I think Sam Darnold's at least worth a 2nd round pick minimum. I mean, you could even go as far to say, depending on how many other pieces go each way, it could be worth a 1st round pick because
he was drafted number 2 overall.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal quarterback. I think he gets used as a scapegoat. I know he threw 2 pick sixes. One of them was on the first drive of the game, but I do think he is a very good quarterback. And put him in another team again, as we said with Joe Burrow, put him in the Indianapolis Colts, and I think he's a good. So I don't think it's as much on Sam Darnold as it is against the rest of the Jets and the hierarchy there.
I think you saw Sam Darnold's quality. I mean, obviously the Jets only scored 1 touchdown. He did do a hell of a lot for most of the game, but the touchdown he scored, he managed to engineer it ridiculously well.
It was unbelievable.
That's the kind of thing, like that kind of play from Sam Darnold. If Deshaun Watson did it, you wouldn't be surprised. It's the kind of thing he would do week in, week out. So there is definitely quality there, but like Mikey said a couple of times, I think there's other problems there with the Jets rather than putting the focus
Talking
on
about other problems with the Jets, I have this note down here. I have 3 words: Frank Gore. Why?
It doesn't age.
Like why? And to be fair, you could put in Kalen Ballage. Why? Why has he brought these people?
I think Frank Gore is waiting until his son reaches the NFL before he retires.
Yep.
I think he's trying to do a LeBron James and Bronny James Jr. kind of thing, waiting for their son to join the league and try and play a season together and then retire like that. But One final note I've got here is I genuinely think the Colts offense probably could have sat out this week, and their D would have handled the game perfectly.
As the Colts defense owner, I would agree with you.
Aye.
Yeah,
I think
they were fantastic.
Yeah, they were very good.
I have a little game to play because this game was fairly boring, so I have a little game to play with you. I found out that obviously Rivers passed 60,000 passing yards in this game, and he also threw his 400th touchdown. There are 5 quarterbacks who have thrown more touchdowns than Philip Rivers. Do you know who they are?
Drew Brees.
Yep, he's thrown 552. He's number 1 at the moment.
Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning's 539. He's at number 3.
Tom Brady.
Yep, he's number 2, 547. Now, this is a team game, so Kai can chip in.
No, Mikey, feel free.
Have I got one more quarterback?
I want to see if you can get them all.
There's 2 more. There are 5 people that have thrown more than Philip Rivers. I'll give you a clue. None of them are still playing.
Yeah, I was going to say Dan Marino.
Correct, 420.
Am I missing out the 5th person or the 4th person?
I'm missing out the 4th person. The 4th person's got 508 passing touchdowns.
I kind of want to say Eli Manning, but I'm not gonna.
No.
I'm not gonna.
Don't.
Dan Marino.
Mikey.
Nah, I'm out.
Mikey, you're a Packers fan.
Oh, is it Aaron Rodgers?
No, he's not starting.
Brett Favre.
Brett Favre, yes.
There we go. Wow, I was thinking of anyone but the Packers.
Yeah, 508 passing touchdowns he's got. So I imagine Rivers will pass Marino because Marino's only 20 ahead, but I don't know how long Rivers is going to play. I don't think Rivers is the sort of player that's going to be in the game as long as Brady and Breeze.
No,
to be honest. To be fair,
I think that 30-second to minute spell was already more exciting than that whole game was the other night.
Yeah, fair point. That quiz may or may not have been more exciting. Very true. Right, so if we're finished with that game, I've just got here that Colts D is underrated, but I don't think it's underrated. I just think it is rated. I think it's good. I think
they're a top 5 option in the league going forward in fantasy.
And not only is their defence great, but their offensive line's amazing because Rivers is hardly getting hit. So I think they might be a wee sneaky Super Bowl contender, to be honest.
Yeah, shout out to Pancakes Nelson, Quentin Nelson.
Yep, exactly.
Especially in that division as well. Obviously, the only other real contender is the Titans. Texans don't look as if they're going to be any threat to them this year. So if they can keep people fit and obviously their D stays as productive as they have been, I think, like you say, they could be a good shout.
I'm just going to clip that you just said that the Texans aren't any threat this season, so that in like 6 weeks' time when they've won the next 6 games, I can play it back and see if you still think
I like that.
Can we also mention the fact that I said I don't think?
Oh no, I'm not going to keep that bit in. So if we're finished with that game, we're going on to the next one. The Seahawks were at home to Dallas. Seahawks won 38-31. I've got here
another good game.
It is another good game. Yeah, I've got here that Dallas have been involved in 1 possession games for all 3 games so far, and they would actually be 0-3 if the Falcons knew how onside kicks worked.
The main thing I'm going to say, and you can take this audio clip from me as well. I think the NFC runs to Seattle. I think they're going to be in the Super Bowl this year from the NFC. I just think they are fantastic. Brought in Jamal Adams as well from the Jets. He had to get out of there. I think that the NFC is going to run through Seattle, and I think Russell Wilson's going to win MVP. I really do believe that this year.
14 touchdowns already.
Yeah, crazy.
3 games.
It should be 15 if DK Metcalf didn't dilly dally.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah,
I think that between him and between DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, they have 2 very, very exciting wide receivers, and then it looks like Chris Carson's probably going to, provided he's fit, do most of the work on the ground. I think they've got a very, very good team.
For anyone that doesn't know, we're talking about DK Metcalf catching a huge touchdown pass, dilly-dallying towards the end zone, and the defender coming and punching the ball out just before he crosses over that line, and it getting out for a touchback.
When you see the replay, like literally when he gets to about the 8-yard line, he just slows right down, and it looks like he's just kind of showboating a bit. he obviously has no idea that the corner's behind him. But
No, I don't think he knows he's there.
I mean, this is only his second season, so at least he knows for the rest of his career that when he catches a ball, he runs
Get it
hard
over.
and fast.
Exactly.
So it takes one mistake to learn from it, and he's obviously going to learn from it. Luckily, they won the game, so he's probably not going to worry about it too much, and he scored the game-winning touchdown. So DK Metcalf is I just think he's an absolute monster. Him and Justin Jefferson over the last 2 years are the two wide receivers I really wanted the Packers to draft, but Metcalf I think fell to the second round before Seattle picked him up, or the third round potentially. Yeah, so
certainly not. First, I don't think.
Looking like an absolute steal at the moment. I really like the whole roster in Seattle.
Can we quickly, still talking about the Seattle offense, talk about that tackle by Tristan Hill and Chris Carson?
Yeah, I think there should be at least a ban.
Yeah, that's pretty nasty.
Yeah,
I'm even more irate about it since I have Chris Carson in fantasy. And as me and Mikey discussed the other night, that drive, obviously the one that DK Metcalf eventually got the game-winning touchdown on, I think we both mentioned that whoever scored the touchdown there out of Carson and Metcalf could potentially obviously turn our matchup. And with it being Metcalf, I think it kind of took Mikey out of sight, unfortunately. But yeah, I think it was a pretty nasty challenge.
I was just quickly talking about the fantasy there. I was going to say it's fairly easy to be out of sight of Kai, but Kai beat me a couple of weeks ago, so I can't really say that.
Yeah, just watch what you're saying there.
But yeah, to talk about that tackle again, so that all three of us said it. I think definitely there's got to be some type of disciplinary action in that, because
the play was dead. Carson was already on the ground, and he's just held onto the leg and almost looked like he's twisted it around. And yeah, it's just not nice to see, especially with Chris Carson, who is a very well liked running back in the NFL from even people that don't own him in fantasy.
Folk are describing it as like a gator roll, like an alligator would if it got one of its prey. It really wasn't pleasant.
Yeah,
that's something we don't want in the game. Moving on to the Cowboys side. I have, again, a little question for you both, see if you get the right answer. So the Cowboys are one of only two teams without a rush of greater than 15 yards so far this season. Who is the other team who doesn't have a rush greater than 15 yards?
Just an instinct, I'm looking at the matchups for next week to see if a team jumps out, but my first guess will be the Detroit Lions.
I'm taking Detroit Lions as your guess, Mikey, right, Kai?
I'm going to go with the Jets.
And Kai wins this round.
The Jets have nobody.
The Cowboys and the Jets are the only teams without a rush of greater than 15 yards.
Yeah,
if Frank ran any more than 10 yards, I think he would collapse.
Yeah, I think so. I've just got here, rushing struggles for the Cowboys, but Dak threw 57 times for 472 yards. Imagine throwing for nearly 500 yards and still not winning the game. Yeah,
I think. But again, I don't think the Cowboys will be too displeased with that one. I think they've got. I mean, I can't remember the name of the wide receiver who went off this week for them. But if you take him out of the roster, and you've still got Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, good tight ends, obviously Zeke and Dak. I don't think they're going to have any problems on offense. I think they're going to be in a lot of shootouts this season.
Yep, it was Wilson was the name of the wide receiver.
Wilson, that's the one.
I was trying to look for his first name.
To have 2 touchdowns.
No, exactly. Especially with the rest of those receiving options there. But I definitely, as I was saying, they're all being one possession games for Dallas, so they could very easily be 3-0, and they've had tough matchups. But they could also be 0-3. So, but I suppose 1 and 2, they can't be too disheartened, seeing as the rest of that division's a bit of a mess.
Cedric is his first name.
Cedric is that? Right, okay. And I don't think I'd have put a Cedric on him, but never mind. If we're happy to finish talking about that game, I don't think there's much else to talk about. It was a really good game, a really fun game, but I say in terms of,
I think it went the way we all kind of expected it to. Like Mikey said,
I agree with Mikey. I think the Seahawks
look good.
Yeah, totally agree with you. The next game is the Bucks at Denver. The Bucks won 28 points to 10. And I've just started this off with Denver struggling without Drew Lock, Cortland Sutton, maybe even count Philip Lindsay in there as well as a change of pace back. Like they seem to be struggling.
Yeah, I think I've obviously noted down Philip Lindsay here as one of their big misses. I think obviously having Melvin Gordon's nice, but he's not really living up to what was probably expected of him.
Definitely not.
I think you can probably put some money on Philip Lindsay coming back in and taking quite a lot of the snaps on the ground. I think they've missed them.
To be honest, I was surprised when Gordon went to Denver in the first place. I didn't think that was somewhere
Yeah,
they
it
particularly wanted.
never made a lot of sense. I know he was potentially trying to get himself out of the limelight of Austin Eckler, but I don't think it's been a very wise move. I think he's probably gone to the wrong place.
I just thought that Denver were fairly. I know Royce Freeman struggled a bit, but the kind of 1-2 punch of the wee Lindsay elusive getting by everyone, and then Royce Freeman just running into folk, I thought was fairly good. And I feel as if Gordon's kind of trying to. I think he's there really to replace Freeman, because Freeman hadn't played much the first to begin with. But he's not the kind of person. He's also trying to be elusive as well. So it seems like him and Philip Lindsay are kind of doing the same job. It's weird anyway, and certainly I think they're missing Lindsay, and definitely their number one receiver Sutton missing's a problem for them, and obviously with Lockby now they moved on to QB number 3 with Rippon there as well. So
yeah, I think the Broncos were always going to lose this game. There was just far too many injuries against above average is the ceiling, I would say, right now for the Bucks, but plenty of room for improvement for them. But yeah, the amount of injuries that the Broncos just always looked like they were going to lose this game.
Yeah, and as Kai was saying earlier, talking about the Jets, looking into Thursday night when you've got the Jets and the Broncos playing against each other this coming week, it's probably another one of those games that you're like, does that really have to be on the telly by itself?
Yeah. For our predictions, I think I'm just going to flip a coin for that one.
Yeah. I think it's a lot to ask of, like you say, with Courtney Sutton being out. I think it's a lot to ask of Jerry Jeudy to come in and kind of take the load from wide receiver. I'm not saying he's not capable of it, but I think so early on especially with a second and third choice quarterback, he's probably not used to working under them.
Yeah, definitely.
As with Drew Lock.
I've got down here, Kai, that the Bucks defense is actually quite good. I know maybe a lot of people weren't rating it to begin with, but
I said that last week as well. I think they're probably a lot better than people have probably expected them to be.
Yeah,
I think they had one of the best run Ds last season, didn't they?
Yeah,
the Bucks. So. Shaquille Barrett, I believe. But I think we'll see a lot of uninspiring wins from the Bucks this season. Like, as great as Brady is, he's not going to light up games anymore. He's just a very consistently good quarterback to have. It's not a bad thing to have uninspiring wins, but you know, I think they'll have a winning record to end the season. I think they'll make the playoffs. Remains to be seen, but yeah, I thought this week was more about the Broncos just being so damaged by injuries than it was the Bucks looking good.
Here's my hot take that I'll clip out and put at the end of the season. I think the Bucks win this division.
Yeah, okay. Well, at least we've got a few clips in the first podcast.
I think the Bucks will win this division.
I mean, I would clip that, but I think you could very well be right, to be fair.
Yeah. Personally, I think so. I think Tampa Bay are looking good with Brady. I think he's a solid game manager. That's exactly what he's there to do. Gronk was catching balls again after the first couple of weeks. He hadn't been doing anything.
Or trying to. Yeah.
Obviously, Bruce Arians has said that he's expecting Gronk to be a blocking tight end, which I'm pretty sure Gronk isn't too happy about.
No, I don't think he was very happy about that.
I can't imagine Brady would be too happy with that either, considering they have such a good relationship.
Exactly.
But it's not like he's short of people to throw the ball to.
No, and talking about one of those people who can throw the ball to, I've got down here again, especially talking about fantasy here. Mike Evans had the most disappointing 2-touchdown day ever. With 2 receptions, 2 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's about the worst you can be with 2 touchdown scores.
Yeah.
Anything else?
There's much more to be said. No, it wasn't the most inspiring game.
No, I agree. Moving on to one which was perhaps a bit of a shock. The Detroit Lions travelling to the Arizona Cardinals, and Matt Prater field goal to win 26-23 for Detroit Lions. I've got here a much needed win for the Lions. And it was really a bad day for Kyler Murray with three picks in that game.
I personally really enjoyed watching this game on Red Zone at the weekend because in my fantasy team I've got Kyler Murray and Kenyon Drake, but then also I had Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay. So someone was always going to be involved when that game was on. But almost similar to what I said about Dwayne Haskins with Washington, I think Kyler Murray threw this game away. Lions made 10 points off of Kyler Murray's turnovers this week. Don't think they ran the ball very well, even with Kyler Murray in the rushing game. So credit to the Lions. I think they were delighted to have Kenny Golladay back. I know he didn't have a big game. He scored 1 touchdown, but I think they'll be glad to see him back and coming out of this game unscathed.
Yep, totally agree with you there. Talking about the Lions offense, I've got down here DeAndre Swift, he being punished for that drop catch at the end of the week
100%.
Because he didn't have an offensive rushing touch there in that game. Was hardly on the field at all.
It's crazy that one play can potentially change someone's career in a way. If he catches that pass in week 1 and they go 1-0, who knows what happens week 2 and week 3? They might give him a much higher usage than what he's seen so far. But I feel bad for him, and I hope that the Lions rally around him because he does look like a very good player. He was great in college, so again, remains to be seen what happens with DeAndre Swift, especially when they've got quite a crowded backfield.
And talking about that crowded backfield, Kai, is my next question is Adrian Peterson ageless? He had 22 attempts for 75 yards.
I think he falls into the same category as Frank Gore.
Yeah,
possibly a slightly higher quality player.
Yeah, I would say significantly higher quality,
especially at this stage.
At this stage, I think he's a far better option than Frank Gore, obviously, to have. If you compare the two and their backfields and stuff, I think, as you've seen, I think the Lions will probably be happier with having an ageless Adrian Peterson than a Frank Gore. But I think he's definitely a very, very good option to have, a very good guy to have in your team.
I know Adrian Peterson is a MVP winner, probably like first ballot Hall of Famer, but yeah, it's just kind of one of those what ifs if he didn't tear his ACL and things like that. I know he came back and had a phenomenal season after the ACL tear, but I honestly think it would be the question if he had less injuries, it would be he's the best running back of all time. Who's next? Yep. I genuinely think that would have been the discussion, but I'm glad that he managed to find his way onto a team where he's going to get a lot of carries because I still think he's a very valuable player to NFL teams, maybe not so much in fantasy.
Yeah, definitely. He's a sort of one because he doesn't really do much in the catch and the catching side of the game. Not really hugely relevant, especially for us in a PPR league where our league is.
It seems slightly ironic that as much as the Lions are punishing DeAndre Swift for not catching the ball, the only offensive snap he got, or the only successful offensive snap he got was a 20-yard reception.
Very true. My last point for this game, really, because I say Arizona, personally, I thought they were going to win this game, but they obviously didn't. But Hopkins, 10 catches. I'm assuming everyone thinks that Arizona won that trade when they traded away Johnson and brought in Hopkins.
1,000%. Yeah. No doubt about it. I think the one thing that what I researched when I was looking at doing drafts this season was obviously because of COVID and the lack of preseason games and training camps is draft players who have strong relationships with their quarterbacks already. So for example, Julio Jones, Devontae Adams, because they've played with Aaron Rodgers and Matt Ryan. I was worried about Hopkins because I wasn't sure how good the connection was going to be between him and Kyler Murray, but yeah, seamless transition into the Cardinals offense.
Yep, and really, the Houston Texans are looking for a number one receiver, and they traded one away. To be honest, when you look at the way they play, they look like a team that just needs a big number one receiver, and they had it and chucked it away.
Enter Antonio Brown.
Well, yeah, we'll see what happens. Maybe in 8 weeks' time when he serves his suspension. See if he does. But certainly, I imagine Arizona will be looking to bounce back in their next game when they're away to the Panthers. It's the sort of game I imagine they'll be thinking that they want to win. But we'll talk about that in just a moment when we're looking forward. Game 15 of 16 this weekend was Sunday Night Football, and if I'd properly sorted my thing, I could play the Sunday Night Football theme tune, which I think for future weeks I might record that and pop it on here. But that was the Green Bay Packers travelling to New Orleans, and a 37-30 win for the fantastic Green Bay Packers. I'm sure Mikey is just as happy as myself with that result.
Yeah, I think the Packers look very... the two of you will take this really well. The Packers look very good this season. Aaron Rodgers looks as if he could be playing at the top of his game.
I've got that. Rodgers back to his best? Question mark.
Yeah, he looks like he's back to the Aaron Rodgers that you two probably know and love.
I was saying the coaching staff looks like they're letting him do what he wants again. Whereas previous seasons they were trying to get the ball to run, but he seems to be being allowed to pass the ball.
I think last season Mikey liked to call him the grumpiest quarterback in the league because he never looked like he was happy, regardless. Even if you were winning, he didn't look happy. But I would probably say one of the biggest things to note from this game, on me personally, that I've noted down is without Devontae Adams, Alan Lazard has more than stepped into his shoes for last week.
Again, I have exactly that written down. Lazard stepping up after Adams misses.
I think everyone thought that the Packers were going to crumble this season because they went 13-3 last season, one win off the Super Bowl again, got to the NFC Championship game, and usually that means a regression backwards, and B, the lack of bringing in a wide receiver 2 in the draft. I think a lot of people were, and then obviously the whole Jordan Love situation with Aaron Rodgers, but I mean, it seems like last year was almost, I know we finished 13-3, but last year was almost a transitional phase into this new system for Aaron Rodgers, and a huge fan of Matt LaFleur. But yeah, Aaron Rodgers just looking phenomenal. I think the NFL top 100, there's only been 2 times that Aaron Rodgers hasn't made the top 10, in 2011 and 2014, and both years he went on to win MVP. So maybe it'll be the same again this season.
Aye, maybe so. Talking about those Packers draft last year, they obviously drafted AJ Dillon as well early on, and just looking through the stats, he had 0 offensive snaps this week.
Yeah,
0.
he doesn't appear to have done anything.
Everyone thought it was going to be a 3-headed monster with Jones, Williams, and Dillon, but Tyler Irvin seems to have stepped up to take on some of the snaps, which I was fairly surprised with. I don't know, Mikey, how much you actually know about Tyler Irvin, but personally I don't know anything about him. And he seems to be taking quite a lot of snaps.
About him. I know that we had to use 3 draft picks on AJ Dillon, 1 for him and then 1 for each of his legs because they're absolutely massive. But I did think one person that doesn't get the credit they deserve as well is Jamal Williams.
Yes,
did I say that right?
Yeah, you did.
Sorry. I think he's a very good RB2 behind Aaron Jones, but I think last season was just a small sample size of what Aaron Jones could do. I think this year he's going to be fantastic again.
Yep, I think so. I think to be honest, that whole offense is amazing. I mean, they scored over 40 points. 40 points are over the first 2 weeks, and this week they scored 37. So
yeah,
I think,
yeah. What one stat I've seen on
by a long way. Sorry, by a long way, they're the highest scoring team in the NFL at the moment, and they look every bit worth it.
What one stat I've seen on Sunday Night Football, which blew me away, is that I think Peyton Manning has thrown touchdowns to over 250 first rounders, or something like that. Aaron Rodgers has only ever thrown to 1, which is Mercedes Lewis. He's only ever thrown a touchdown to 1 first rounder before. So it's crazy to think that we just apparently don't draft wide receivers, or even tight ends for that matter, in the first round. But I thought the tight ends actually were really good. Robert Tonyan, Mercedes Lewis, Jay Sternberger, all stepped up in this game in the absence of Devontae Adams, and I really like the look of the offense this year.
Yeah, just to clarify that stat, I think it was 250 touchdowns, 2 first-round picks, as opposed to touchdowns. Because
I don't think there's that many years in the world. One thing that I just thought was crazy from this game, just to go into the Saints side, is in PPR scoring in fantasy, Alvin Kamara is wide receiver 4 at the minute, and that doesn't even include his rushing stats.
So
he's just been used insane amounts in the passing game, obviously in the absence of Michael Thomas as well. And I think that's the reason that the Saints have lost back-to-back, is the fact that they are missing Michael Thomas. I know that people say that he's just a slot receiver, but you see when he's not in the team that how much they struggle.
I've got that down here, Kai. With no Michael Thomas, is Breeze bad without him? I know obviously Breeze managed many seasons without Thomas, but
yeah. I mean, he appears to be just trying to do a straight swap, and if Michael Thomas isn't there, I'll just throw everything at Kamara as well. It's quite, like you say, there's quite a significant drop off from 140 yards receiving for Kamara to Emmanuel Sanders, who had 56.
Yeah, I've got noted here. Kamara was the passing offense, but actually Murray had more rushing attempts than Kamara as well.
Yeah,
he had double the rushing attempts. Which
I'm a big fan of Latavius Murray. The first time I ever seen him was when him and Jarrett McKinnon were in the backfield in Minnesota, and before Dalvin Cook got drafted. And I always liked both of them. I thought Latavius Murray was a proper Derrick Henry style running back, and Jarrett McKinnon was a nice pass catcher. And I think it's good to see Latavius Murray complement Alvin Kamara, and I'm happy to see Jarrett McKinnon have a decent start to the season after a few injuries.
Yep. There's a wee stat I've got here just before anyone talks anything else I want to talk about. On Alvin Kamara's 52-yard catch and run for that touchdown in the third quarter, there were 6 missed tackles by Green Bay players. 6 players managed to get a hand on or very close to him, and Kamara managed to get out of all 6 of those attempted tackles. That was unbelievable.
I think in there's a clip that I've seen a couple of times. I'm not entirely sure who it is, but one of the big offensive linemen manages to run past Kamara while he's on his run, and puts in a good 3 or 4 really good blocks. Like, he just stands in front of him, and I think Kamara's slightly amazed by the pace of this big guy.
I think I was as well.
There was one player, I'm just looking to see if I can find the name here. There was a player who had 2 sacks, his first ever 2 sacks for Green Bay last night, on Sunday night. I thought he was fantastic, but the name just escapes me at the moment. I'll find out once we move on, but I thought he had a very good game. I know everybody talks about the absence of Kenny Clark and Preston and Zadarius Smith being 2 of the better players on D, but I thought this player whose name slipped my mind was fantastic on Sunday night.
Is it potentially Kiki? I know that sounds bizarre.
I think it might be. I believe it is.
He's down as having 2 sacks.
He's got 2 sacks here according to the stats.
Yeah,
Kingsley Kiki.
Yeah, thought he was brilliant on Sunday night in the pass rush. And I've always been a fan of Jair Alexander. I thought first game against Minnesota, he was amazing. I think he was one of a select few amount of players in NFL history to have a interception, a touchdown, and a safety in the same game. And I think he's just waiting to have a breakout season, and I really hope he starts to show that for the Packers.
I totally agree. I think we've got some great players on defence, as you can imagine. If everyone listening, we quite like talking about the Packers, so sometimes
can we stop this becoming a Packers love-in, please?
Tune in tomorrow for our Packers podcast.
we moved across the Eagles within about 2 minutes.
Well,
we didn't even get a word in edgeways.
When they're winning, we can talk about them.
Exactly.
Maybe next year.
Half a decade's time, but definitely I like a lot of the Packers' defensive pieces, but certainly looking at fantasy, there'd be no way that I'm touching a Green Bay defense, because the Green Bay Packers are scoring so many points that I feel opposition teams are going to be scoring so many points against them as well, because they're going to have to catch up. So I don't think we're ever going to blow anyone out. I think it's always going to be a high scoring game for both sides, certainly. Anything else to add in that game, or can we move on to Monday Night Football?
Go Pack, go.
Yeah. So, yep, definitely. Moving on to Monday night, we have what I think a lot of people will project is going to be the AFC Championship game in the future, with Kansas City at Baltimore. Maybe not in that order, but certainly between those 2 teams. Kansas City came out on top, 34 points to 20. Just a couple of notes I've got here, and I'm just going to throw it to you two. Lamar is 0-3 against Kansas City, and he's 21-1 against the rest of the NFL. He only had 97 passing yards in this game, did Lamar Jackson. And
low, I think it was.
I would describe this as the closest blowout game I've ever watched. Like, at no point, really after the first quarter, maybe into the second quarter, at no point did I think Baltimore were going to win this game.
Yeah.
It never looked close.
It was nice to see Tyreek Hill put on a Baltimore Ravens punt returning uniform and sprint 400 miles an hour in for a touchdown.
Duvernay, yeah, definitely.
It was the thing. It was a weird one. I think that the Baltimore D played very well. They obviously had the punt return touchdown, special teams, and a few turnovers as well. But I don't know why. I think all 3 of us said that the Ravens were going to win this one. Even on the panel, when you watch Monday Night Football, all the panel said that it was going to be a Ravens win. And now, even though I said it, I don't know why, because the Chiefs are the Super Bowl champions, and I don't know why they were written off so much in this game. I thought they were as good as they had to be to win this game. They weren't flawless by any means. I don't think they've been anywhere near perfect this seaseason, but I mean, 3-0 when you're playing scrappy against teams like the Baltimore Ravens is all you can ask for, really.
My only,
sorry, Adam, continue.
My only guess, just quickly, for the reason that people were writing off Kansas City is last week when they struggled
that's
against
exactly
the Chargers.
what I was going to say. When you look at their performance against the Chargers, I don't think they filled many people with a lot of confidence. Defensively, they looked like they were kind of struggling to contain Justin Herbert and what the Chargers had to offer, and then offensively, they looked like they were getting going, but it looked as if it was kind of stop and go quite a lot. But they've definitely made up for that this week, I would say. I think they proved on both sides of the ball why they were Super Bowl champions.
Yeah,
they're still very much a force to be reckoned with this year again.
I think, as you said, Adam, the AFC Championship game potentially going to be Ravens versus Chiefs. I think the AFC runs through the Chiefs and the NFC runs through the Seahawks. I think it'll be a Chiefs-Seahawks Super Bowl. Obviously, a lot can change in the next 15-odd weeks, 14, 15 weeks. But the Ravens will bounce back. I just think when they go into a loss and they need to overturn points, their style of play doesn't suit that because they're very run heavy. So it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back from this game.
Yep, totally agree. Anything else to add?
No, I think as much as it was the most exciting game, touted to be the most exciting game of the week, I think it very much became
as much as I said this about the Texans, I think Antonio Brown could potentially go to the Ravens as well. I think they need, as much as I like Marquise Brown, he's still young, he's only in his second year. I think if they brought in someone like Antonio Brown, Marquise Brown can be to the Ravens what Juju was to the Steelers when AB was there. I think that could be very interesting.
Well, Marquise and Antonio are related, aren't they?
Sorry?
I'm sure.
Cousins.
I'm sure Marquise and Antonio are related.
I think they are, and I think in the off-season, AB, Marquise, and Lamar were all training together and doing things together.
Yeah.
Anything else to add on to that?
All good here.
So that's actually, looking at the time it is, it's taken us a bit longer than we had actually projected to review the previous week. But
first week teething problems.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it just shows we've got lots to talk about. Whether any of it's any good, I don't know, but we've got lots to talk about. So
I'm pretty sure nobody's got to this point. If they're listening, they're probably switched off half.
I was going to say, yeah, definitely. I'm not even sure I'd listen this far, but well, move on now. Certainly here to looking forward to next week. I imagine this section is going to take a lot less time because basically, I think we look at it and then we could just roughly predict what we think is going to happen, if that works for you guys. Mm-hmm. And then after that, we can have a look at the overall scoreboard for our predictions from the week before, and then that finishes us off roughly. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Yeah. So I am just looking here on the NFL website, and the first game obviously is Thursday Night Football, and I imagine that's going to be a fairly short conversation we have here because it's
toss a coin.
Yeah, exactly.
Watch it.
I mean,
I bet it's going to be a 55-48 game or something like that.
It'll be a great game because they're both so bad that they'll find a way to cancel each other out. The
only thing I'm going to say, keep this one short, is just it'll be interesting to see what Brett Rypien does with that Broncos offense. I don't think he's going to be under any pressure because he knows he's coming into a tough situation there. So it'll be interesting to see. I will watch the highlights, but yeah.
It's definitely not a Thursday night game that I'll be staying up to watch. I'll put it at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your predictions for that game?
I'm probably going to go with a Broncos win. I don't think the Jets have anything about this year.
As much as I said Jets are going to have the number one pick in the draft next year, I do think they win this game just because of how injured the Broncos are, and it's in New York.
I totally agree with you. I think the Jets will scrape a fairly...
Yeah. I think it'll finish maybe 6-3.
Aye. Or maybe the was it a Monday night game a few years back with Seattle that was 6-6 or something like that? It was not an interesting
fun
game.
To watch.
Yeah. But yeah, I totally agree. I'm going to go with the Jets for that game. Quickly move over that one. The next one in this list here, I'm just going by the list on in Game Pass. It might not be the same as the website, but the next one's the Cardinals at the Panthers.
Yeah, that's what I've
Is that the next one on the list? Good. We can all go to the same list then.
I don't, but it's fine.
Oh, that's fine.
I like to do things the backwards way, so it's all good.
That's all right. I'll just start here. I think it's going to be a good game. I think the Panthers against Cardinals. I think Kyler also want to try and bounce back after that disappointing game against the Lions. And I think, to be honest, the Panthers will try and kick on from their performance against the Chargers.
Yeah, I think that the Cardinals will want to bounce back, but this is one of the games that I looked into that actually has a crowd in it, depending on whether it's a few thousand or whatever. But so Panthers with a bit of a crowd behind them coming off a win. I'm going to have a wee look into that one before I decide who wins.
Yeah, my initial thing here is I'm thinking the Cardinals as a bounce back, and I'm worried the Panthers might be a bit too. Oh, we won a game, yeah, great,
yeah.
And possibly lose it there. But I think I'm a similar position to you, Mikey. That I'll be looking at that closer to the time. Really, the only one we really needed for proper prediction would be the Thursday night, because obviously we are recording on the Thursday here to know for the game. But well, you'll find out in the next podcast exactly what our predictions were for the rest of the games when we go through the predictions at the end of the next one. Do you have anything to add about that game, Kai?
No, not really much to note. I don't think it's a game that off the list of games for this week, I don't think it really jumps out as one to pay close attention to. But yeah, I'm much like you guys. I think probably need to go away and have a look. I think the Cardinals will probably be too good for the Panthers. I think they like you say, they'll need to bounce back. They need to show that they've got that about them. So
yeah. The next game here, the Colts travelling to the Bears. I think this actually might be quite a low scoring game.
Yep.
I think there's two fairly decent defenses there, and I think I think it'll be fairly low scoring. I'm not going to say boring, but I don't think there'll be a lot of highlights from the game. What's going to happen here is going to be 40-40. It's probably what the score's going to be now. I've said that, but
is that low scoring in terms of what the games you watch?
But yeah, I think it'll be a low scoring affair.
Yeah, I'm keep this short. I think Foles Magic is going to come in, Bears to get the win and go 4-0, believe it or not.
I can't believe you're saying that as a Packers fan.
Yeah.
Kai?
Yeah, I'm going Bears win as well.
Yeah. I think I'll probably go for the Colts, but we'll see what happens. I might change my mind later on. Jags travelling to the Bengals. Is Minshew coming back?
This is another game with a crowd in Cincinnati. I think with a bit of a crowd, Bengals. I think they're knocking. They're more than knocking. They're hammering down the door for the first one. I think the Bengals will finally pick it up here.
Yeah, I think coming off last week with the Jags obviously losing to Miami, and the Bengals they've not obviously had their first win yet, but they've looked worthy of one through 3 weeks. I think. Like Mikey said, with a bit of a crowd behind them, Joe Burrow kind of having something to kind of spur him on. Not that he needs it, but I think the Bengals could be a good shout here.
Yep, I agree with you. I think the Jags are a really bad football team. Feel free to clip that. And I don't think there's any chance that they win this game. I think the Bengals will win it easily. I think possibly by double digits. Moving on to the next one, Cowboys at home to the Browns. What do you think?
I'm going Cowboys here. I think I think they're another one that've kind of been unfortunate through weeks 1 to 3. Obviously, getting the turnaround win against the Falcons was a bit of a surprise given the position they were in. But I think through the other 2 weeks they've just been a bit unlucky. I think they'll probably kick on this week and get another win.
Yeah, this one's in Dallas, isn't it?
In Dallas, yeah.
Yeah, again with the crowd, big stadium. So if everyone's working at like 7% capacity, the Cowboys are probably going to have the most fans in the stadium, if that makes sense. So I think if this game was in Cleveland, I honestly wouldn't be surprised with the Browns winning. But I think in Dallas, I think the Cowboys win this by at least 2 touchdowns.
I agree. I think the Dallas Cowboys will win this game. I think they've been really close in all their previous games. I think they'll win this game. So I think it might be fairly close. But I think the Cowboys will win this. I realise that the Game Pass has not actually got the same order of games as the NFL's website, so apologies for that. But I was working down the wrong lists. But Detroit at home to the Saints is the next one I have here. There's a possibility, I think, that Michael Thomas is back for this. Is that right?
That's one of the ones that you need to. If Michael Thomas plays, I think the Saints win. But I would not be surprised if the Lions won if Michael Thomas is missing.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I think Stafford is actually a very solid quarterback.
Hugely underrated.
Hugely underrated, yeah. And I think with his receivers there, if he's got a fully fit team around him, I think they're actually a fairly decent side. I know that we like to write off the Lions as much as we can, but I actually think they actually might be. They're probably, in my opinion, a better team than the Bears, and the Bears are 3-0. So
exactly.
Yeah. What do you think, Kai?
Yeah, I think it will be a good game. I think both teams with identical records through 3 games. Like you guys have said, if Michael Thomas is back, I think it's a massive plus for the Saints to finally be able to let Kamara just run with the ball and obviously still have that elite receiving threat. I think the Lions could potentially struggle a wee bit. But again, it's a massive if. I don't think he's been 100% in practice yet this week. So it's a very much, it might come down to a game time decision. And I think if they go with him, I think it gives them the edge.
Yep, this is another one of those predictions that we'll hear about next week when we actually have made it close to the time.
When we come back to it.
Exactly. Next game here we've got is the Vikings travelling to the Texans.
Not so much of a prediction here, more how on earth are both these teams 0-3?
I know they're both definitely better than the record suggests.
I think the Vikings win this game by running the ball a lot, and Texans, believe it or not, going 0-4.
I know it's a tough start. A tough start for the Texans, certainly. I mean, you couldn't really have it much tougher at the start of the season when you looked at it to have Kansas City, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and then Minnesota. They're 4 tough games to play for the Texans. So, to be honest, I agree with you. I think the Vikings might do this, as much as it pains me. Is you the same as okay?
Yeah, I definitely going for the Vikings, I think.
The Dolphins at home to the Seahawks. Is this a fair
easiest one?
Next.
Yep.
I move on, Seahawks.
Totally agree with you. I think Fitzmagic might have a lot of throws later on in that game, and I don't think all of them might go to his own team, to be honest. The Bucks at home to the Chargers.
That's one I'm going to need to have a really good think about. I think that's a very, very interesting matchup.
I feel you've got to give it to Brady with his experience. I think he might be able to manage that
Potentially,
game.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. I took your silence as agreeing. The Redskins at home to the Ravens. No, sorry, I said Redskins. I apologise.
Nope.
It's the Washington football team. I'm getting used to that still.
Ravens massive bounce back from their loss. Lamar Jackson's going to come out angry and will have a monster, I think.
How many points do you think they win by?
I'm not sure how many points, but I wouldn't be surprised if Lamar goes over 100 rushing and 100 passing.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough to say.
I don't think the Washington defense will have much to. I don't really think they'll get a look in with Lamar.
No, I think as Mikey says, it'll be an angry game from Lamar and a comeback from that game. I think the Rams at home to the Giants.
Rams all day.
Yes. Do you think Giants get double figures?
No.
Nope. No, that, to be honest.
Again.
Yeah. Well, here's a good one. Kansas City at home to the New England Patriots.
That is an interesting one. The Chiefs obviously showing this week against the Ravens that they are still the Super Bowl champions. They still have every bit of quality they had before, but the Patriots have kind of taken me by surprise a wee bit. Obviously, with Cam Newton under centre, there was a bit of anxiety about whether he would come in. He's obviously a totally different quarterback to Tom Brady, but it looks as if he's rejuvenated the offense a wee bit as well. I think this one might be a lot closer than people anticipate.
Yeah, on you go, Mikey.
I think Cam has the biggest chip on his shoulder of any NFL player this season. I think he's got a lot to prove, but I went against the Chiefs last week, and I'd be stupid to do it again. I do think it'll be a very close game. I actually think this will be the game of the week. But yeah, I can't go against the Chiefs anymore. Again, Chiefs have got the crowd in Arrowhead, not their usual noise levels, but it'll be a very close game. But I think the Chiefs are going to win.
I was listening to a little bit of Colin Cowherd on FS1. I think his show's on, isn't it? And he was saying that the things you need to do against the Chiefs is to keep Mahomes off the field, and when he's on the field, give him pressure in the pocket without a blitz, because against the blitz, his passer rating is 156 against the blitz. Like, as soon as he sees the blitz, he can pass the ball fine, and they're two of the things that I think the Pats will be able to do. I think they've got a good enough defense that they'll be able to have just 4 give them pressure and 7 sit in coverage, and I think that they run the games, they run so much that they'll be able to keep Mahomes off the field. So I think it's going to be really close. I might have to think about this. I think this might be, I suppose you could call it an upset. I think Chiefs are 7-point favourites, but I think Pats might sneak it. This is a sort of game that you'd imagine Belichick could easily win.
Yeah.
Raiders at home to the Bills.
Bills.
Yeah, I think coming off last week.
Yeah, Bills for me as well. I think it's actually 2 good quarterbacks. I think Derek Carr's an underrated quarterback, but I think the Bills will win this game. Sunday night football is sorry Kai, 49ers at home to the Eagles.
I think even without their returning injuries, I think they could probably only have 2 or 3 come back from injury, and I think they would still probably win this quite comfortably. I don't think the Eagles will put up much of a fight. It pains me to say it.
Personally, I think the 49ers could get 3 or 4 more injuries and still win.
Yeah.
So
I think you could be right.
I have a bit of a prediction in this one. I think Carson Wentz is going to throw 2 or 3 picks, and we'll maybe see some Jalen Hurts this week.
Very possibly.
As an Eagles fan, I would like to see that.
And I will cut that as well. And if it does happen, I'll give you the credit. I'll cut that into a wee segment, and we can go all the things Mikey had right.
It'll be a short segment.
Monday night is the Packers at home to the Falcons.
I think the Falcons will go up 30-0, and the Packers will win 33-30.
All in the last quarter.
Yeah.
I think whatever the over under is in this game, bet the over.
Yeah. I think this will be a high scoring shootout. Yeah. You've seen it with the Packers. The Falcons are, whether they're winning or losing, are very pass heavy. I think it'll be a very, very good game to watch.
Yeah.
The Packers can't really defend, or they haven't, so far defended that well against the pass this year.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you two will probably reluctantly agree. Not that it matters, you're 3-0 and you've scored a ridiculous number of points, but I think it will be, like you say, Mikey, I think it'll be a bit of a shootout. I think that's the way the Packers have beat teams so far this season, as they just outscore them.
Yeah.
As someone who's a Packers fan but also has Calvin Ridley in their fantasy team, I'm looking forward to this game. And the last game of this weekend, which I suppose is probably a couple of minutes of chat on it, is the Titans at home to the Steelers. So obviously the news is the game's been postponed. Just now, the NFL said it could be Monday or Tuesday. CBS apparently have been told it's going to be Monday, because of the 4 positive COVID tests for Tennessee now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was initially 3 players and then 5 backroom staff, but I think obviously since then there's been a 4th. Like you say.
The Vikings, just to clarify, didn't have any positive tests after the game. It's just the Tennessee players that seem to have had it.
Yeah, this is a very hard one to call, just with everything being so up in the air and moving it a day. Titans are meant to have a crowd in the stadium, but is that going to go ahead now, because of all this? So again, I'm going to have to decide probably 10 minutes before kickoff.
From what I've heard as well, the Titans aren't practicing.
Yeah, they've not been allowed to yet. The
They're not allowed back
Vikings,
in the office.
I think the Vikings are allowed back in their training facility from tomorrow.
So,
But the Titans, it could be down to Saturday before they're allowed back in.
so at the moment, personally, I think I probably fancy the Steelers just because of that preparation, but we'll see what happens there. But that's all those games. Roughly what we think is going to happen with those. We'll have the predictions proper, and you'll find out at the end of the next podcast, because that's when we'll go over them. But just now, at the end of this one, we'll have a 2-minute warning, which I'm sure I'll create a sound drop for eventually, Mikey, because you had a very good idea to have a 2-minute warning on our podcast. I'll have some whistle happen, and then after that 2-minute warning, we talk about our picks. So if we just imagine I've blown a whistle, and then we can talk about our predictions from the last week to finish off this podcast and see how accurate
something
we
tells
were.
me this is going to go longer than 2 minutes.
Oh, well, the 2-minute warning is never 2 minutes, is it?
We've got timeouts. We will all take some timeouts.
Exactly. I was going to say, the 2-minute warning normally takes about quarter an hour when you're watching a game. So
yeah, so obviously we've started this going into week 3, but myself and Kai both had 9 out of 16 games correctly predicted. Adam with 7. We've obviously spoke off camera and said that if it ever comes to a tie, we're going to obviously pick a tiebreaker player of the week. I think we're just going to chalk this one up to a draw for last week, but obviously now we're all going to pick our tiebreaker player of the weeks for the upcoming weeks, just in case we get to a tie again.
Yep. So
are we disclosing our player of the week?
Well,
I will say mine with confidence, yes.
Okay.
We've all agreed as well that they can't be in the top 10 of their position rankings as well. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with the number 18 ranked wide receiver, Cooper Kupp, against the New York Giants.
That's a shout.
Yeah, I had a few other ones, mainly before we decided on that. I had Russ against Miami and Aaron Jones against Atlanta, but they're in the top 10. I think they're actually in the top 2 of their positions. So, Cooper Kupp ranked number 18 against the rubbish New York Giants.
Interesting.
Kai, I'll let you have yours.
I have a number down here. I've not ranked them as to what one I want as my first pick, so I'm just going to do this randomly. I think with the news that Fournette is potentially out for the Bucks, I'm taking Ronald Jones.
He was one of the ones on my list.
Haha. Yeah, I just think he's not really had a great shout through 3 weeks. Obviously with the introduction of Fournette, so I think if he's given the backfield almost himself, I think he could potentially find himself with a decent score.
Yep, he was one of my options. But the pick I'm going to go for, which I'm glad no one picked, because my first pick here was Tyler Boyd.
He's also on my list.
With the Bengals. I think he's currently ranked 13th overall in the position of wide receiver. And we say the Bengals are going to the Jags, and to be honest, think they're going to let Joe Burrow just have some fun and throw that ball a lot. Even though they're going to be ahead, I think they're going to let him practice, basically. and they're going to throw that ball a lot. And I think Tyler Boyd will probably get a couple of touchdowns. That's my prediction.
I hope so, because he's in my fantasy team.
Also surprised that nobody went for Devontae Adams, because he's number 16 ranked wide receiver, and I think that'll be the last time he's not in the top 10. But
that's very true. I'm still worried about whether he's actually going to play, though.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
I've got Alan Lazard on my list with a question mark and in brackets Devontae Adams. If Devontae Adams isn't involved, I think you probably see Alan Lazard take a big role again.
Right, so they're all set in stone.
Right, brilliant. So at the moment, the predictions for those games last week, we say Kai and Mikey, and the year-to-date rankings are now 9 correct predictions. I'm on 7, and fingers crossed I'll be able to overtake you after this week. We'll note them down somewhere, and we'll talk about them later on in the next podcast. So far, we've talked for quite a long time. I didn't think we were going to be able to...
longer than we anticipated,
exactly, I didn't think we were going to be able to talk for this long, but I've been fairly impressed. Not too much of it was drivel either, so...
Yeah, it's been positive.
That's good. If there's anything else any of you want to say, feel free, but otherwise I think we could just about finish up before we do anything else.
Go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go,
yeah,
indeed.
I'm not taking that. Yeah, there's not really much else to say.
No.
Do we want to be really bold right now and make a Super Bowl prediction?
I've given mine. I think it'll be Chiefs, Seahawks, but I don't know who's going to win it.
Adam?
You see, I made a prediction at the start of the season, but I don't think it's right now. So my pick I'm going to go for is maybe it's home team bias. I think the Packers. Go on, be confident. I think the Packers for the NFC.
I like that.
I'm going to go left field picks because I feel as if it's a bit boring picking the same. And I say I like the Colts. I think the Colts might do it. I know that Rivers hasn't been very good post-season, but maybe that's just because we're the Chargers. With this good Colts team, maybe he'll get that.
I'm going even more left field from the AFC. Well, actually less left field, but just
Jets.
someone that's not the Chiefs. I think I'm going with the Bills from the AFC.
Oh,
I think with Josh Allen's quality, if he can continue it for the season, and I think they keep everyone fit, I think they're a Titans-esque wild card from the AFC. And I think with the NFC, I think I've got to go with the Seahawks. As much as I'm sure you two would probably love to see the Packers there, I think the Seahawks will probably just have a bit too much over the course of the season.
Yeah, well,
there's three totally different.
Just some fantasy football updates live. I've got an app that gets updates before you too, so that's how you win titles. Broncos running back Philip Lindsay has turf toe and he's considered unlikely to play tonight against the New York Jets.
There we go.
Well, that aids my pick then, since I think the Jets.
Yep.
Yep. Hardline Sky. Well, if that's everything, then I'd like to thank you, Kai, and thank you, Mikey, for joining me for this venture into podcasting. We'll see how it does.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank everyone, maybe the one person listening at home. I don't know, however many people are listening or watching, depending where you are, because this will be going up on all the podcast platforms, and I'm also going to post it up on YouTube as well. So wherever you're watching or listening, thank you for listening, and we hope to see you next week if we can all get together and we haven't fallen apart after our poor predictions.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much for listening. Yes, I will talk to you next week.
Thank you.